Good evening, everyone. The hour being after 7:30, I'd like to call the August 6th school committee meeting to order. And by executive order of Governor Baker, this will be a remotely convened meeting. I'm going to just go through the list to take attendance so that the public knows who is here in attendance. So just please say here when I call your name. Bill Buckley?
Present.
Mark Breen?
Here.
Kristen Cyrek?
Here.
Jen Gayotzis?
Here.
Shauna Hearn?
Here.
Carrie Denizio?
Here.
Nancy Gallivan is here. And in addition to that, we have our administrators, Mr. Hahn, Dr. Bridget Goff, Mr. Quealy, Mrs. Mortali, and Mr. Frisha are all on this Zoom right now. So, that being said, the first order of business, Bridget, is the reopening?
Yes.
Okay. Before you get started, I just want to add a few sentences here. Reopening school this fall is going to be a major test across the country as states and towns try to participate in phase 3 of reopening. But it's a tremendous test compared to what has happened so far. Daycares have opened, limited day camps have opened, but this is a big step, and it will require an awful lot of cooperation, trust, and communication. And for that reason, we want to make sure that we get as much information out to the community as in as timely a method as possible. So tonight's meeting is to review a recommendation from the administration and to vote on the plan that we hope to start the Walpole Public Schools with. And we're going to let the administrators go through the plan, and then there'll be plenty of time for questions. So unless it's something extremely glaring, let's hold the questions and let the administrators go through the presentation first, please. Okay, Bridget.
Thanks, Nancy. Yes, that would be helpful if we hold the questions to the end. Thanks, Nancy. It would be helpful if we hold the questions to the end because some of these questions may be answered later in the presentation, and that would be extremely helpful. So Walpole Public School COVID-19 planning advisory teams, they've been working diligently to develop a fall reopening plan that aligns with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or what we refer to as DESE guidance. Our planning process continues and will continue to be guided by the monitoring of the Massachusetts health data. DESE directed districts to devise, as you are aware, 3 models for reopening: a plan for all students returning to school in person, a plan for the hybrid model, where students spend some time in school in person, and some time learning at home, and a full remote learning plan where all learning is done from home. As you remember, during the last school committee meeting on July 24th, we outlined these 3 plans. Depending on the school committee vote tonight and when the plan is released to the public next week, families will then next week receive what's known as an intent for fall 2020-2021 enrollment form to indicate whether they will send their child or children to school based on the identified plan. This information is crucial in our final planning and will allow us to reallocate staff and adjust schedules as needed. Of course, we know that under normal circumstances, students would be best served in schools every day, interacting with their peers and engaged in live classroom learning. While our educators and families worked incredibly hard last spring to implement remote learning, we know that the approach presented was an enormous challenge, and it did not reach all students. and is not, as we know, an adequate substitution for in-person interaction with our teachers. In order to adhere to the school reopening guidance provided by DESE, consistent with recommendations for the CDC and the American Pediatric Association, we also do not believe that we can safely meet physical distancing requirements with all students and staff in the buildings at the same time. However, we do believe we can make significant changes in our school schedules and operating procedures to make a partial return to in-person learning both safe and successful. This hybrid approach, which you know that we recommend, will require strategies to ensure physical distancing, as well as serves other critical health and safety measures. Our planning process includes a comprehensive set of strategies and investments to minimize the risk of transmitting the virus. As a result, we continue to work collaboratively with the Walpole Teachers Association for a hybrid learning plan, which, as mentioned, would bring the students back into the school buildings for in-person instruction in smaller, socially distanced groups on a rotating basis, combined with a robust remote learning program on the days the students are not scheduled to be physically in school. Additionally, we hope this plan enables us to bring preschool, kindergarten, and a subset of students back to school every in-person learning day, but also in smaller, distant settings with all other practices in place. It's very important that we recognize that the circumstances of every family and staff member are different, and that no plan will ultimately satisfy everyone in our community. It is also important to remember that flexibility and fluidity are essential during this time, and it is evident that the guidance is subject to change based on developments in relation to COVID-19 pandemic. As always, our goal is to create a safe, healthy, and engaging learning environment. We will continue to work with the Walpole Board of Health as we prepare for reopening with our schools this fall. This plan will be the framework from which we will continue to work toward providing the most valuable educational experience in the safest manner for all of our students and staff. I just want to acknowledge, before we go any further, I just wanted to thank the many groups that have really worked tirelessly throughout this planning process. The Walpole High School Advisory Group, the Walpole Middle Schools Advisory Group, the Elementary Schools Advisory Group, our Special Education Advisory Group, the Walpole School Nutrition Team, our Central Administration, our School Committee, the Walpole Teachers Association, the Walpole Board of Health, our Town of Walpole Administration, the Walpole Rec Department, and our parents and community stakeholders. Thank you to those of you that have provided feedback through our surveys, phone calls, and emails. What I want to do before I get into the plan is just review some of these, review the survey results, and I'm going to also turn it over to Nancy for some feedback with some regarding surveys. So if you take a look at the first couple of questions, given the current guidance about the reopening of COVID-19, how likely are you to allow your child or children to return to in-person learning? And this is with 6 feet and social distance, physical distance, and mask. So 1 was like definitely will not allow, to 5 being definitely will allow. So you can see the 1 of definitely not allow was 5%. The two on a scale of 2 was 10, 3 was 18, 4 was 23, and 5 was 44. Again, this was the survey that was given back on July 23rd. We also asked that if it was not 6 feet, if it was 3 feet, to find out if there was a difference in that. There was a slight difference. You could see that for 1 definitely not allow rose a tick to 8%. Then 12%, 18, 22, and 40. Just to note, we had 2,058 responses to this survey. So that was a great survey result. Now, for those that were not planning to allow their children to return, we wanted to know what specific concerns, and we asked them to check all that apply. The top responses, as you can see, were social distancing, followed by cleanliness and safety concerns, concerns about wearing a mask, and then also your pre-existing health condition. Obviously, it adds up to greater than 100% because we were asking them to check all that applied. When looking at the three options and asking which situation, what model would they prefer, you can see that it really is diverse. 38% were alternating days, which we'll talk about because if you remember, we talked and looked at some alternating days. Half days, what I mean by half days, it would be one group comes in at the AM and then the other group comes in at PM. Week on, week off, and then 10% said none. I put an asterisk on the half days, the AM, PM, because we found that the largest percentage of those who indicated morning and afternoon days were pre-K and K, and that information was helpful for us in terms of planning. If we went hybrid, would you send your child or children to school? 74% responded yes, 5% no, 21% unsure. We asked also about, as you know, that we're working with the town of Walpole to see if we were able to get some type of child care. 14% at the time of the survey said yes, and 17% were not sure. With that, Nancy, I know that before I continue, I just wanted to know if you wanted to provide any comments about the feedback that we solicited from parents these past 2 weeks, because I think we got a good response of either feedback or some questions that I feel confident that we'll be able to answer a lot of them this evening.
Yes, I would just add that we had over 70, I think we had 76 people at my last count that had written to us through the school committee website, and a number of people were simply asking questions. They were not necessarily advocating for one position or another. It was a little bit hard to tell how many people were advocating for the remote learning option, but there were many, many questions about that. So I know that that's going to come up in the survey. It appeared to me of the 76 that 14 people were advocating for a remote option for their children, that 9 people were advocating for the hybrid model, and 8 people were advocating for full in-person. It wasn't a survey, remember. It was they had the chance to ask questions. And like I said, a number of people were more asking questions. But when I look at that, to me, it's not an extreme. If 9 people are looking for hybrid and 8 people are looking for full in-person, that's a tie, if you ask me. And there were definitely an awful lot of questions about the remote option, and I know that we've conveyed that to the administration, that we want that to be fully covered in tonight's presentation.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. I'm going to start to talk a little bit about the school year calendar. I know that's later in the agenda, but it fits in the plan, and Bill Hahn will also be discussing that, so we're each taking a piece. But the state has recognized the need to provide additional days prior to the start of the school year to train staff in health and safety protocols, and then also increase our capacity to address our students' needs in a hybrid remote learning environment. So as a result, the school year for students would we're recommending to start on Monday, September 14th. The school year for staff will begin on August 31st as scheduled. It's important to note that while the state afforded districts to begin the school year no later than September 16th, both the teachers and the administrators recognize the importance of beginning school on a Monday as opposed to a Wednesday. So as of now, the students' last day would be on June 15th, but this is subject to change. And again, we'll get into more of the calendar when we're discussing the hybrid model. And then, as you know, we always reevaluate district plans. 4 to 6 weeks, we'll probably need to even reevaluate that sooner. So I wanted to address the preschool and kindergarten before we get into the hybrid plan, because they're a little bit of a different subset in looking at feedback and what we could do for this group of learners. In looking at Daniel Feeney preschool, the Walpole Public School District recognizes that remote learning is especially difficult for preschoolers. Therefore, all preschool students in special education and tuition-paying peers would be invited to participate in the in-person schooling. Given the small group nature of preschool, Daniel Feeney will be offering consistent programming while keeping groups small enough to ensure safety protocols. The plan, once released, will provide detailed information regarding student materials, physical distancing, and other safety measures for children at this age level. To ensure safety, each classroom cohort will have recess in a designated location of the preschool playground area and rotate locations daily. Consistent with all grade levels, students can learn outdoors, weather permitting. Students will be instructed on how to use a mask through modeling and social stories. These social stories and resources will be shared with our families at the start of the school year. Teachers will coordinate scheduling for recess, bathroom breaks, arrival, and dismissal in order to keep cohorts of students together. In order to implement cleaning and disinfecting protocols, the original half-day classes, which the morning and the afternoon, have been reorganized into full-day classes. As you can see, the time of attendance will remain the same. Preschool director Julie Martin will hold a Q&A forum for all preschool families. In looking at kindergarten, we are planning for kindergarten students to attend 4 days a week in person, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Wednesday would be the synchronous remote half-day. Class sizes will be reduced through additional staffing to ensure social distancing and safety protocols. Weeks that have holidays will not have remote learnings on those days. We're trying to work that out. So what we're trying to do is switch to an in-person learning day so that K students will remain in person in their small groups 4 days a week. We decided that we would have a question and answer forum just for kindergarten parents because we recognize that this model is different than the rest of the elementary grades. I'm going to turn it over to Bill Hahn, who will talk about the general overview and the specifics of the hybrid model.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Goff just mentioned, I will do my best this evening to provide a general overview of the hybrid model for the district and then be more specific at some of the levels to do my best to answer as many questions as possible.
Bill, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you. Right from the start, we didn't get it.
Okay. All right, hold on. We'll fix it.
I'm unmuted.
You want to talk in this one?
Can you hear me now? Any better?
Give us 1 second.
Yeah.
All right, we'll try. Why don't you try it? You want to work off of this one?
Can you hear me any better now?
How about now? Anything from Bill?
Well, I'm not talking. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Stop me if you can't hear me. Thank you. So as I started to say, I will be providing a general overview of the hybrid model and then jumping into some of the schedules at each of the levels for high school, middle school, and elementary, and do my best to answer as many questions as possible. As Dr. Goff mentioned in her opening comments, the hybrid model allows for both in-person and remote learning. Our belief is to promote student learning and growth while addressing concerns about the potential transmission of COVID and the overall safety of our students, staff, and of course their families. This model also allows for staff and for students to practice 6 feet of social distancing by limiting class sizes while still ensuring that our students have access to their teachers and buildings in person. One thing that's very important to note about our hybrid model is we've worked very hard to ensure that our model reflects and is carefully considers the transition between remote and hybrid in person. And what I mean by that is if at any given time, obviously we might start the year, depending on the vote for this evening, in hybrid, but our hope and our goal is to always be in person, to continue to do so as we can safely. So our hybrid model allows for us to smoothly go in person, and that's what our schedules have considered. And in addition, if, as we know from last year, there's sometimes very unpredictable matters, we are forced to go remote, our hybrid model allows for a smooth transition for remote. So both of these things were very strong considerations in the building of our hybrid schedule. Go to the next slide. So to explain a little bit more about the cohort model, the hybrid cohort model that we've adopted, all learners in grades 1 to 12 will be assigned to one of two cohorts. Cohorts will alternate in person and remote learning on Monday and Tuesday for one cohort, oftentimes referred to as cohort A, and then cohort B will be Thursday and Friday. All students will be remote, receiving synchronous learning schedule on Wednesday. It is important to note that there was a lot of discussion about whether or not the remote synchronous day would be Wednesday or Monday, and we received quite a bit of feedback from both parents and staff that Wednesday was the preferred option for many reasons. That was something that we listened to and understood that Wednesday was clearly the most desired choice by our community. Students from the same family will be kept in the same cohort. On weeks shortened by holidays, the schedule and format will be adjusted for Wednesday's classes to make up for the missed direct instruction time. That's easily seen if you look to the calendar that is posted on the slide. Anytime you see a green week, it means that there is a day off in that week for a number of reasons. It could be for Martin Luther King, it could be for Martin Luther King holiday, it could be for a number of different holidays. And on those weeks where we are only in school for 4 days, we will still have students in for 4 days, and it'll be that day that will be dropped, replacing the synchronous remote day that would have been Wednesday. One thing that's very important, two things that are very important to note, is that students will not be able to transfer to another cohort. And then also you will see when our final draft is released for the hybrid plan, that we do make a note that the designation will most likely be split alphabetically. You'll see the language of A to J in one cohort and L to Z in the other cohort. However, it would be impossible to guarantee that every student whose name is A through J is definitely in one cohort and every student who's L through Z will be in the other cohort. And we will, based on keeping families together and keeping balance in our school system, we will have students that will maybe not have that last name starting with that letter be in a different cohort. So we ask all families and community members to please wait to get your cohort designation before making decisions about childcare, transportation. We don't want anyone to assume and get the wrong message, so that's just very important note that I wanted to make this evening. Next slide, please. All right, we'll start with the high school schedule. You'll see there's an example of the potential high school schedule on this slide. The high school schedule will have a pretty major change to the general schedule. There will be a 4x4 semesterized block schedule, and I'll explain that in more detail. Periods 1 to 4 will be scheduled in semester 1, and periods 5 to 8 will be scheduled in semester 2. All 4 periods will meet each day with a still following a 4-day rotation. You can look at the minutes and the length of each of the classes in the schedule provided. Due to the longer class periods, full year classes will be completed in either semester 1 or semester 2. And also all traditional semester classes will now be completed in the term period of the first, second, third, or fourth term. This model there are many pros to this model, but some of them were due to limit passing time and contact with other students and staff in school, and we believe that students will benefit from having to focus on only 4 classes as we start the school year in the hybrid model. You can go to the next slide. What you'll see here now is the middle school schedule. Students in the middle school will be assigned to a specific learning, what they're calling learning pod. This too will allow for limited interaction with other groups, and students will stay in the same classroom for the majority of the day. Extended class periods will allow for deeper and more rigorous exploration of learning concepts. 2 important things to note with this model: is that to keep balance and keep classrooms equal, we will be eliminating leveled classes in ELA and math for the coming school year at the middle schools. And also, the related art model will change a little bit, requiring related art classes will only be scheduled for a term. There will not be a reduction in the amount of minutes. It will just be scheduled similar to the high school, because you'll have to be increased time. The term that you'll be taking in related arts will equal the equivalent of 1 semester worth of classes, but that is only for related arts. Next slide. This is an elementary schedule. I will make a note that while the high school and middle school, their schedule is pretty accurate to that work of the advisory group, this is just an example of an elementary schedule, and there will be differences certainly from grade 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and 5. Students will be assigned to their traditional grade level classroom. This schedule and the limited numbers of students will limit interaction with other classrooms, and students will be staying in the same room for the majority of the day. Again, similar to the middle school and high school, we'll be limiting student interaction in the halls and lessen traffic during transition periods. Teachers will utilize grade level planning grid with scheduled times for morning mini lessons for math and ELA, small groups when appropriate, and closing meeting. And before I move on to the next slide, if we could go back to the high school slide. Sure. I want to make a note in here about one of the comments I made before about our goal to make transition between not only the models, but also to make sure that we're connecting our students that are in school and students that are remote. So one of the other benefits to having the longer class period is we will be working with our teachers so that they can take attendance, not only for the students that are in person, but we will require students that are at home to log on at the start of every period, so teachers can interact for the first 5 to 10 minutes of a class with the students that are remote at home and also the students that are in the building. We are not suggesting that teachers will be streaming the length of their entire classroom, but we want constant engagement with our students that are at home so that even if they're working remotely, if they're in a cohort that is home that day, they're still engaged with their teachers, their classmates, and their work. It'll allow for consistent communication, conversation, potentially collaboration, and announcements from the teachers. And that will be true for the high school, the middle school, and also at the elementary level. We are still working on the fine details, but we are going to do our best to allow, at the elementary level, the students at home to join and greet students that are in school during morning meeting at designated times during the day, and one more time at the end of the day for summarizing and dismissal. Okay, the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the remote learning management system. Before I jump into the remote learning management system, I think I just want to clarify many of the questions that were sent to the school committee asked if there will be a remote option for students who are not comfortable being in school. And so this is the remote option if Walpole Public Schools chooses an option like a hybrid or an in-person option. This is the option for parents and for students who do not want to attend school. We're referring to this as the remote learning management system. I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to summarize it briefly, and then I'll talk in more detail. So as I mentioned, this is options for family who are still uncomfortable sending the students in person through the hybrid model. As you can see from the slide, it requires a full remote learning program that's endorsed by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We are working with DESE to still determine the learning platform and cost. The full remote learning may not be monitored by Walpole Public Schools, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute. And students who choose this option may be required to stay in this model for the entire semester. So if you're asking why at this point we still do not have all the details and have identified our model, just yesterday, DESE released their endorsement of 4 programs. That was released, yesterday. We had a call about that. And then this morning and today, we met individually with a lot of these programs. The 4 systems, so two of them are full synchronous programs. The Greenfield Commonwealth Virtual School, sometimes referred to as GCVS, and the Tech Connections Academy Commonwealth Virtual School, sometimes referred to as TECA. Both of those virtual schools are at a cost and endorsed by DESE, providing a full synchronous remote option for students who are not comfortable enrolling in a hybrid or in-person model. DESE is also endorsing 2 asynchronous models, Edgenuity and FLVS Global. These models are asynchronous and provide content that will be given remotely and will require staffing from the Walpole Public Schools. It's important to note that we are looking at all of our options, and we are also considering, depending on staffing and student demand, if we have a model that could be managed strictly by the Walpole Public Schools staff. As you can imagine, it's difficult to make and to identify the perfect solution right now without knowing the numbers of students who will be choosing the remote learning management system. And that is it for me. Thank you. I know there'll be questions, and we're ready to answer those.
Okay. Dr. Quealy with special education. Oh, just got to take yourself off mute.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, great.
So for students who have IEPs, services are going to take place through a combination of in-person and remote opportunities. However, we're making every effort to provide as much in-person service as possible. We won't be able to provide all in-person service in the 2 days that most students will be in the buildings, but we're going to provide as much in-person service as we possibly can. There will be a group of students that will identify who have significant learning needs and will be invited for participation on a daily basis. So for the 4 days that we're talking about, we'll be inviting students in. Myself, Mr. Hahn, and the principals are having those discussions right now as to who those students are. I will tell you that we have invited a small cohort of students to participate in an extended school year experience, a live experience taking place at the high school and Elm Street School that started this week and will run through next week. So we have actually had students in the district over the last couple of days. We'll continue to do evaluations in the fall, and team meetings will continue to be virtual as they've been this past spring. And I will also tell you that we have done some evaluations over the summer, over the last couple of weeks, particularly at the preschool and high school levels. In the event of a move to full remote learning, we're still committed to providing as much in-person service as we possibly can, but those details will need to be discussed, and we'll have to look at what options might be available to us in order to do that.
Thanks, John.
Sure.
So as we know, risk can be mitigated if we follow health and safety guidelines and we practice good hygiene. The plan will outline the COVID-19, what we call as the risk reduction plan, which you have in front of you. And that's a plan for the entire school district and will continually be adjusted and refined as we continue to receive further health and safety guidance. School-specific plans and protocols will also be made available prior to the start of the school year, because those will be, like I said, school-specific. So I wanted to just go over some bulleted points. First, we will require face coverings for students and staff in all buildings. Masks, as we know, are among the most important measures to contain the spread of COVID-19. The recommendation is that face masks will be required for grades K to 12 and will be strongly encouraged for all preschool students. I do recognize this is a recommendation. The school committee may change that and agree that we're requiring masks for all students in pre-K through 12. So I just wanted to make note of that. We will be asking students to bring a clean mask to school every day, and the district will be providing extra masks as backup. Students with medical, behavioral, or other challenges who are unable to wear masks or face coverings may have the option of wearing a face shield. Face shields and or further social distancing are common accommodations for those students who find it difficult to wear a mask. Frequent mask breaks will be scheduled throughout the school day, and mask breaks can occur outside when weather permits. Physical distancing is an important practice that helps mitigate transmission of the virus. Studies suggest that physical distancing of 3 feet or more leads to reduced transmission, with additional guidance providing additional protection. It is important to note that 6 feet distancing is emphasized in public health advisories, especially when no mask or face covering is worn. 6 feet is the recommended distance between individuals in all classes. That's also noted in the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health report and the Parabola Project, and that's made up of Adrian Labs, Brigham and Women's Hospital, and I just mentioned the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. We will require frequent hand washing or hand sanitizing because as we know, hand hygiene is critical. All students and staff will be washing or disinfecting their hands regularly throughout the school day. Sanitizing stations will be installed in high-traffic areas and available to students and staff throughout the buildings. Parents will also have the opportunity to approve their child's use of hand sanitizer. We will consistently implement other mitigating measures in addition to physical distancing, such as hand hygiene, cleaning and disinfecting, and the masks and coverings. It is important to remember that no single mitigation strategy is effective alone. Rather, it is the layering and concurrent implementation of multiple mitigation strategies that will slow transmission. All staff will undergo comprehensive health and safety training before the first day of school, including proper cleaning and sanitation procedures, what to do when a child is sick, how to teach students school and classroom safety protocols, and how to monitor and support students struggling with safety guidelines. School hallways will be designated as one-way or two-way with clear signage. Decal signs, arrows will support social distancing and directionality. Also, physical barriers will be placed in high-traffic areas, for example, the main office. Students in pre-K through 8 will be arranged in cohorts to minimize social contact with their peers. As Bill mentioned, grades 9 through 12 schedules are constructed to minimize travel. We will minimize student movement at each school and encourage outdoor instruction as weather permits. I know that was a big question, is whether students can have class outside. The answer is yes. We will be actively limiting capacity in restrooms and other confined spaces. Unfortunately, visitors will not be allowed in the buildings. Schools will develop specific procedures for when parents need to drop off or pick up their children, or even delivering items during school hours. In collaboration with our Walpole Board of Health, we will be initiating contact tracing procedures and protocols in cases of positive COVID testings. We do have a response protocol, COVID exposure and infection. The DECE or DECE issued protocols, which is posted on the website, for responding to COVID-19 scenarios in either the schools, on buses, or in community settings. So these protocols, which are outlined in the plan before you, will outline all the procedures for positive testing, close contacts, and there's also a symptom checklist. We've also included a quick reference sheet that will outline key actions schools will take when responding to a COVID-19 event. If there is more than one case, students or staff in the school at one time, or even if there's a series of a single case in a short time span, we continue to work with the Board of Health and also with Kathy Garvin, our head nurse, in order to follow the proper protocol for if a transmission happens in school. Please note that when there is one isolated case, we've had this question, close contacts will need to stay home and be tested, not the whole school. If Massachusetts moves back into a prior phase, DECE, in consultation with the Massachusetts COVID Command Center, will communicate with school districts and schools to determine whether in-person schools should continue. And prior to reopening of the district, all inventory will be checked for PPEs, and Mike will talk about that, and making sure that we have more than enough supply and inventory, and reviewing the hygiene protocols. I know there was some question about metrics, right? When do we know? Are there certain metrics of when we go to full remote or when do we go full in class? We've had that question, and DESE, even as recently as today, indicated that they're working with the DPH and that more information will be forthcoming. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Fisher, who will talk about building cleaning and disinfecting.
Thank you, Bridget. So I'd like to start with the custodial staffing and training. The custodians have spent the past few months working with our administration, preparing for our students and staff to return to school. By the start of school, all custodians will have participated in several comprehensive trainings addressing cleaning, disinfecting, all taking place in a COVID environment. Additionally, I'll be requesting a change in custodial working hours for one evening custodian in each building to support the additional demand during the school day. These additional demands will include things such as arrival and dismissal preparation, lunch service, and ongoing disinfecting throughout the day. Bathrooms and other high volume areas will be disinfected regularly during the school day. Special attention will also be given to high contact surfaces throughout the building. Cleaning and disinfecting our buildings. When it comes to supplies, I wanted everyone to be aware that we currently do not use what would be considered green or hydrogen peroxide types of disinfectants. Our disinfectants are designed to effectively eliminate COVID-19 as well as any other potential viruses or bacteria. Each of these products are included on the N list for the EPA and certified to be highly effective against COVID-19. We currently are using 2 disinfectants, one for a manual surface cleaning and disinfecting, and the second is a tablet form disinfectant that is diluted in water for our backpack sprayers. Each of these disinfectants has a shorter dwell time, allowing for efficient and effective elimination of viruses and bacteria. Each classroom has been provided with disinfecting wipes and disposable gloves that can be used for wiping down desks and any other surfaces in the classroom throughout the day. When it comes to equipment, we currently have 9 electrostatic sprayers that use a tablet-based disinfectant that is electrostatically charged and is sprayed in a very fine mist that adheres to all surfaces and kills all viruses and bacteria. This product is ideal for classrooms and larger common areas. Coverage will include any areas that are accessible to students. The average classroom takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes to disinfect. Superintendent Goff mentioned PPE, personal protection for students and staff. We have spent the past 5 months purchasing a variety of personal protection for our students and staff. This list includes student and adult masks, face shields, safety glasses, gowns, gloves, and hand sanitizer. Our current supply is anticipated to last at least 6 months, with all items currently available for resupply. Building-related protections. We also have purchased custom-sized plexiglass shielding for each school to be placed in high concern areas such as nurses' offices, main offices, and cafeterias. Each school has also received an abundant supply of signage that will be placed throughout the building to reinforce the critical aspects of a healthy building, such as maintaining a safe distance, proper hand washing, and use of hand sanitizer. Each school will also have signage at the front entrance alerting anyone entering the building of the COVID-related requirements such as mask wearing and social distancing. And then I wanted to address ventilation and air filtration in the classrooms. All classroom HVAC systems are designed to circulate air continuously throughout the day to minimize the buildup of carbon dioxide. The circulation of air is designed for classrooms with occupancies of 30 students. Classes averaging 12 students, which would be our hybrid model, will have an abundance of fresh air circulating throughout the space. In addition, recent CDC guidance has also encouraged windows to be open in order to draw additional air into the classroom space and to allow air to be exhausted out as well. We will be adding fans to each room to help supplement the air being delivered by the HVAC systems in all buildings. Interior classrooms that do not have operating windows will be provided with a medical-grade HEPA 13 air purifier to assist the primary ventilation system in keeping air circulating and clean. And finally, filters will be changed. The number of times that filters will be changed will increase from 1 time a year, which was during the summer, during the traditional summer cleaning, to 3 times a year now to maintain, again, that fresh air coming in and being exhausted from classrooms.
Before I move on, Mike and John, just in terms of the masks, I just wanted to address the clear masks. Could you address that? Did we, that we ordered clear masks for special populations?
We have ordered clear masks, and actually in the ESY program that I talked about that started this week, staff have already started using them. So they have been distributed or will be distributed to high needs, to staff members who work with high needs kids, in our programs, our speech therapists, things like that.
Thanks, because that was a question that came through.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. So I'm going to cover food service as well. I wanted to begin this by thanking Maria Hall and her staff, the food service staff in Walpole schools, and all the volunteers that have been involved with serving food since shortly after our schools closed, and continue today, and will continue throughout the summer, providing meals for our school-age students, and in a lot of cases, their families as well. It's been a fantastic program. It's been a lot of work, but a lot of volunteers and some of our full-time staff have really done an amazing job for providing those meals. So with that in mind, I can tell you that the meals will be available for all students, regardless of what scenario we're in, depending when we open school or as school continues. DESE has encouraged all food service programs to continue providing food throughout any type of modeling that we're doing for education. In order to facilitate this, we're using a new software that we purchased recently, which handles online ordering. Families will be able to go in at the beginning of a week and order a week's worth of meals, so that will give our staff the lead time they need to prepare those meals and to have them ready to go at the beginning of the day. The traditional model of students going to the cafeteria in the kitchen and waiting in line for their food will have to be discontinued. We're going to move to a grab-and-go model where the food is prepackaged based on the orders that were placed on the online software that we just recently purchased. Staff who prepare the meals will be wearing proper PPE. In many cases, they are ServSafe certified, and they've also additionally been trained by a vendor that we have that does specifically sanitization within our food service program. They use a special product that sanitizes, not disinfects, so it's safe to use it on food types of surfaces. Desks and tables will be sanitized. I know, as we mentioned, I think it's obvious that students will be eating in many cases in classroom environments, not something that we've traditionally done in the past. We are prepared for that. We've gotten the products that we need to properly sanitize those surfaces, that when students are eating, the desk will be clear and clean. And then once they're done eating, that desk will be cleaned off again for them or for any other students that are going to share those desks. And throughout the entire operation, we feel confident we can maintain that 6-foot social distancing. Obviously, students will have to remove their masks when they're eating, and it'll be important that they are able to maintain 6-foot social distancing.
And Mr. Frischer has transportation.
Okay, transportation. So it's important to mention, I'm going to keep to these bullets because I don't want to overcomplicate this. I want to keep this as simple as possible for families to be clear about what services we're going to provide. So all students will be eligible for transportation, but DESE, and this is a very critical part, has encouraged families when possible, when and if possible, to transport their children to school. it is very helpful with the hybrid model that we have half our students going to school, but to be able to provide timely transportation and not exceed the capacity of our buses when we're talking about 12 to somewhere between 20 students on a bus, it's important that whenever possible, families can transport to school, their children to school. All staff and students on buses, regardless of age, are required to wear a mask at all times. I know there were a lot of questions about what the responsibility of the drivers are. I think I can answer that when we're done with the presentation at the end. I'd be happy to answer those questions. Students will have assigned seats. They will sit one student per bench, alternating, so that there's enough distance where, again, we're maintaining that 6-foot social distance that's so critical to the whole plan for the school and the buses. There are exceptions for families that have multiple children. If they're riding on the same bus, they will be able to sit in the same bench seat and will not have to obviously fall under that 6-foot social distance rule. Students may not eat or share items on the bus. These are things that we generally practice anyway, but we want to be really sensitive to especially not eating on a bus, because obviously that requires removal of a mask and compromises everyone around that individual. Bus windows will remain open at all times. Same idea as the schools. Increased airflow is what really keeps an environment healthier. So the bus windows will be open at all times. Obviously, if it's raining and it can't be kept open, or if it's snowing, they'll have to be closed. But in most cases, those windows will be open. When the students enter and exit the bus, there will be hand sanitizer available. This is part of the protocol for Connolly bus. They will be providing those materials for students to use when they get on and off the bus. And the drivers will be, in addition to checking for a mask and giving mask reminders, will also remind students as they enter and exit the bus to use hand sanitizer. Buses will be disinfected both in the morning prior to the first run, in the afternoon after the last run. I think it's pretty common with bus transportation at this point with COVID that the timing between the routes is not adequate enough to disinfect every seat every time, just not enough time. So the buses will be disinfected in the mornings and the evenings in preparation for students to ride. And again, I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end.
Thanks, Mike. I also just wanted to mention, as part of the survey that was sent out at the end of July, we had asked also to, do you intend to send your child on the bus in the fall? And you could see that 34% said that they already registered, and we still had 22% who were still, waiting to think about that. For the people that said no, we disaggregated that a little bit more and said, okay, so what are your reasons for not registering for bus? High percentage said, well, I didn't register for bus because I live close enough to walk. There was a percentage that said, they've taken the bus in the past, but, I'm not comfortable. That's in this red bar, the 15.4%. And then the other 15.7 said, my child has taken a bus in the past, but we plan on making some other arrangements in the fall. So what are we looking at for next steps? Well, the detailed plan is to be released to the public next week. DESE gave all districts, an extension, but we're going to be releasing that early next week because you have it in front of you, and we want to get it out to families and our staff as soon as possible. Families and also the staff will have time to review the district plan. We'll be holding a virtual forum for families. So Tuesday, August 18th, to answer questions, it'll be a Q&A. That will be forthcoming on how to do that, how to submit questions, and how the forum will run. We'll do elementary at 6, middle and high school at 7:30. Like I said, Director Julie Martin is working on the pre-K. She'll be reaching out to the pre-K parents. And then we'll also have a kindergarten session. We'll be reaching out to those kindergarten parents. In addition, we will be doing a staff Q&A as well after they've had time to review the plan to answer any questions they may have. In addition, building principals will also be holding their own Q&A because we know that there will be some questions that will be building specific. So they'll be holding those forums as well. And we'll be discussing that at Leadership Council on Monday morning regarding setting those dates. We will be asking families, after they had time to review the plan, a couple of questions. One, to make a decision on whether or not they'll access transportation. That's important because once we know whether they'll access transportation, then Mike Frischer can work with Kim Poirier on developing the bus routes and then determining how many runs we would need based on that information. And then finally, we'll be asking families to confirm if their child or children will be returning to school or they'll be choosing that online remote learning management option that Bill Hahn mentioned. The rationale for that is we need to know so we can be planning, reallocating staff to different areas if needed, and adjusting student schedules as well. Time for questions.
Okay, that's an awful lot of information. I think the thing that makes the most sense is to talk about this in chunks. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions. My thought is I'll introduce one of the topics. We'll go through each of the school committee members and see what kind of questions there are. The first set of questions I'd like to talk about is what kind of guidance have we received? Jen, you had a question or a thought about this. Why don't you kick off that topic, please?
I think Bridget answered it pretty clearly. The fact is that our school district isn't coming up with our own plan, that we're given guidance by the state, and that's where a lot of this is coming from. So I just wanted to make that clear to parents, but I do think Bridget did mention that in the introduction. We're taking into consideration guidance from, as she said, health entities and what the state has provided us, which over the summer has changed. And I know that's caused some concern for parents because originally we had some guidance that looks like we were leaning towards going back to school in person with a 3-foot distance. For whatever reason, that was changed and we received new guidance, and the administration has very thoughtfully addressed that guidance in their plan and, changed direction. So I know that's caused a lot of parents concern, and I think that's just unfortunately where the pandemic is. And as people study this further, it is a very fluid situation. And I know I've had anxiety, and a lot of parents have had anxiety trying to plan. And we just have to understand that things are going to change, and the administration is reacting to new guidance from what they're getting. So it's really not a question, but a comment.
No, I think that's a good point, Jim, because I think in terms of when the school committee votes, it has to be contingent upon knowing that this plan could change at any time, that we have to be flexible and fluid depending on state guidance and health data.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that it's what you read when you read a number of different articles, that scientists like to have years worth of data to make their advice and predictions, and this is a new virus, so we don't have those long-term scientific studies, and in addition to the fact that we don't know what next week is going to bring. So unfortunately, there are going to be some changes. Are there other questions that any other school committee members that want to ask questions about the guidance that is helping us to decide what to do? Okay, then I would go on to questions about what kind of input Walpole teachers or nurses or custodians have already had in terms of giving input to this plan. You talked about the advisory groups. Can you tell us a little bit more about how much input you've already received from some staff members?
Sure, I can start, and then Bill, if you want to chime in. so the advisory groups are made up of the administrators, but they've also, teachers, we've had special educators working with John Quealy, custodians, nurses. We also, in our LC, once we started, back in May and June, Kathy Garvin, our head nurse, has been in every single meeting with us. She's been at all of the leadership retreats. We've also been involved with Melissa Ranieri, the Board of Health. Fortunately for us, she's right at Town Hall, and she's available at a moment's notice. So that was a positive as well in terms of that. Am I forgetting anybody, Bill?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention that we work closely with
the Walpole Teachers Association as well, with consistent communication with their executive board throughout this process. And they've been very good and very strong with their communication back to us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we do meet with the executive board. We've been starting to meet with them, we've been meeting with them weekly. And they have been extremely collaborative. They've been available. Dave Cuzzy, I have to give a shout out to him because anytime I need to call or talk, he picks up the phone and we're able to have discussions and process.
Does anybody else have questions around that level of staff involvement? Carrie?
I'm just curious if we have begun to hear from staff who might need to plan on full remote for themselves, even if we adopt a hybrid model, either for their own health or personal or family reasons. Have we started that process? Do we have a sense of how many staff might be looking for a full remote option, even if we are back in a hybrid fashion?
Yes, we started that process in working with WTA, and then, we'll continue to work with them. And then I think once the school committee votes on the plan, then we can get more of a definitive number in terms of staffing and what we need to do to work with the staff. But we've got to figure out the model, and then we can move forward. Thanks, Carrie.
Anybody else on staffing involved in decision-making? I would also really like to thank the Walpole Teachers Union. I think that sometimes people bash unions, and I can't say enough about their collaborative nature. I think that there are a lot of really challenging conversations ahead of us, and it doesn't mean that all the conversation is going to be easy, but they're willing to be there. So, that's helpful. The next topic that I have on my list is masks. We've talked about the fact that there's guidance at the state level that says grades 2 and up have to wear masks. Our administration is suggesting that grades K through 12 wear masks, and that it's strongly advised for preschool children to wear them as well. Does anybody want to start? Questions or comments related to that? Bill?
Through you, Nancy, thanks. I just had a couple that came from parental discussions. Just obviously we're taking a really hard line on masks, especially I remember we used to all congregate in the 4 courtyards of Johnson when we were kids with the beginning and end of the day with waiting for the bus. So who does that fall to make sure that everyone's got masks on in the hallways, everyone's being distant on the way in and out? Is the building principal or assistant principal that's popping into rooms and kind of spot checking as well? Or just could you kind of walk through the enforcement of that?
Yeah, there'll be protocols. That would be a district-wide protocol, but then at the individual building levels, Bill, it'll be administration. And then there'll also be protocols on what to do in terms of if there's a refusal or if there's a student struggling, with the mask. That's too where you use even your counseling system, right? In terms of, your younger students of having difficulty. Preschool social stories, K social stories, in order to help with the mask wearing.
Any other questions or comments on masks? I think the clearer we can be, the better on this. I think every single one of us is struggling with what the right decision is, but health and safety is tremendously important. I would like to say that all of our students should wear masks, and if there are individuals that need exceptions, I think that's certainly within the administration's discretion. But I think of the young kids, even the preschool kids, as being very literal thinkers, and if they have been used to wearing masks and
Yeah, turn that
they
off.
see people with masks, I think some of them might be less comfortable coming to school if we don't require it. So I throw that out to the rest of the committee, but I would be supportive of having all the students wear masks. I think the teachers deserve that too. Jen?
I was just going to say, having a student going into kindergarten next year, I originally breathed a sigh of relief when I heard, okay, kindergarten isn't going to have to wear it because, they fidget a lot, they play with the mask, and I've taken my daughter on airplanes where she's had to wear a mask for a long period of time, and it's a bit of a challenge. So, as long as the administration is patient and they realize that even if parents are working with their kids at home, that at that young age, they just need to be reminded. And as long as they're willing to do that, I'm okay with it. I just know it's going to be a little bit of a uphill battle keeping them on in the beginning, even for students who've been wearing them. So I would just like to, and I'm sure our teachers are going to be very patient, but I'll be okay with it, provided that, we just have some sort of protocols where teachers can remind kindly.
Do any other people have opinions on it? Now is our chance to give some guidance. So now's your chance if you have an opinion.
Because this will be reflected in the plan that we submit to DESE and then also to the community. So right now, as it's written, it says, K to 12, and then pre-K is encouraged.
Sean?
Yeah, I would kind of second what you were saying, Nancy, that I would encourage it for all students, pre-K through 12. And I think Bridget or Bill during the presentation referenced the use of social stories and things that would speak to our younger students and help them to understand, how it's protecting them, but it's also supporting their fellow students and making it a safe place for everybody.
Carrie?
I agree. I think that within a building, having two different sets of rules is counterintuitive, I think, to the adults and confusing to the students. And so I think it should be one policy, and I'm in favor of having everyone wear masks. And I know from my own experience this past spring that a lot of our teachers already know about resources that exist to encourage mask wearing for kids. I know my son got some things sent from his teacher just about being out in the world, not necessarily at school. So I think that there's probably more out there now, but I think some of our teachers are already clued in to what exists to help with that.
Mark or Kristen or Bill, any opinion?
I concur with everyone having masks.
Yep, I agree.
Mark, anything?
No, I concur as well, Nancy. Thank you.
Okay. Then on that one, I do think, I think this is going to take a tremendous amount of cooperation in order to make it work. And I think you've got the message there that we're going to require everyone to wear masks. And as Jen said, to support the younger kids in a kind way. But in my opinion, getting that information out now allows the parents also to begin to explain to the children what it's going to be like when they go back to school, and that's just going to be a piece of it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next topic on my list is health and safety, including new rules. Who has questions related to anything that has to do with health and safety, or what are the rules? Are we going to be consistent about enforcing them, things like that? Kristen.
I'm just wondering, is there a new policy we need to think about, or what's the, high school students are messing around not wearing masks. People are, the little kids, you kind of understand. It's a challenge. It's something they're not used to doing. What do we do if older kids are not wearing masks who really should know better, or, are not following some of those health protocols? Where there'll be, punishments? Will there be warnings? How do we handle, students who kind of should know better, who aren't following those rules?
Yeah, and that's something that we've been talking about with leadership, because, you have to have some education, and then at the same time being able to have some accountability to ensure that everybody's safe. So we're working on that in order to develop some protocol and policy. And I know that those questions come up. But you're right, it may look different at the elementary versus the middle versus the high school. But I think it's to educate and say, why do we need, it's important. We need, it's the mitigation factor. It's not just one, it's not just 6 feet. It's everything that's put together, right? In terms to make sure that we can minimize the risk, and that's what we want to do. We need to minimize the risk.
I have a follow-up too, sort of along those lines.
Sure.
What about parents who, some of us parents have sent our kids to school and they're kind of borderline, maybe not exactly well, maybe it's a sniffle. And in the past, that's something you can kind of get away with because you really don't know if it's going to turn into something. But now, it's a much different world. There's, kids who are pre-symptomatic who, it might really turn into something. And how do we, you hope everybody's, even parents, are on their best behavior and not sending kids who are sick. But how do we enforce that? Right.
Well, at some point, right, the families, we all have to have some responsibility, right, to making sure that we're following. There's a checklist in there in that plan of what needs to follow. There's attestations that that people can sign before as part of the intent to enroll form. That you're attesting that you're going to do that. Does that might hold some accountability, right? Yeah. And then being able to train and working with our school nurses on what to do if a child presents with these symptoms, to make sure that there is protocol. It's actually in the plan on what to do.
Carrie.
To go back to Kristen's first point about how do you address non-compliance, I just want us to be hyper aware of consistency when it comes to disciplining students and addressing non-compliance, because in my day job, I have often students come to me who feel that rules are not enforced equally across the board, depending on who the student is. And I think there are larger conversations obviously going on, not just in Walpole, but nationally, about students being policed differently in schools and in the world, depending on who they are, what they look like, their age, etc. And so I think we need to be hyper vigilant about consistency in dealing with non-compliance among our students.
Other questions around health and safety? Sean.
Through Nancy, Kristen's second question brought up a question that I don't think I had before. So if a student is experiencing symptoms and they happen to be in cohort A on a Monday and it's their in-person day, if they stay home, would they be participating, if feasible, in a remote, or is that like an absence day?
Take this one. Yeah. Sorry, we're just figuring out who's going to take this one. Yeah, so you're saying, so Sean, you're saying that, so a student like on a Monday, right, is presenting and needs to stay home on Tuesday?
Yeah, or any of the days where they're supposed to be in school, technically.
Yep.
So since there is some remote happening, I know it's not technically with their cohort. So would that be something that they could take advantage of and continue to stay with class, or would that really be a true absence and we would say, take some time and rest, and that's
Like a typical
important
sick
thing.
day, right?
Yeah, right.
Like they're sick.
Just remote options there.
Right, because students will be ill, and you're right, that's a good point. They will be ill, they will be sick, staying home, getting the makeup work. It's not necessarily that they would shift to another program, but working with that teacher. And that's something that we're working on with our leadership council to have protocol to say, okay, when a student's sick, and working with our teachers, where do we want that student? But it's like a sick day.
Thank you.
Carrie?
Maybe you don't know the answer to this yet, Bridget, but if you do, can you confirm whether, let's say we have a positive case in one of our schools, are we relying on the family to convey that information to the district, or do we receive that information through public health just because it's a positive test in our town? How does that work?
Well, I've worked with that with Melissa, and I would have, like I said, I'm going to defer to Melissa and Kathy Garvin, but the past, what the protocol has been, is that when there's a positive case, and if it's in Walpole, that the Walpole Board of Health gets notified by the DPH, and then the Board of Health then obviously works with the family, and then works with Kathy Garvin to determine next steps for that protocol, so that Kathy is notified. But the DPH does notify the Board of Health in that town.
Okay, so I think that's important for people to know, because there's a balance between, obviously, I'm sure that HIPAA guides that process and the sharing of information. At the same time, I think people might be wary that a student in the class could test positive and nobody knows, right? And so I think it's good for people to know that that's not actually, that it wouldn't be possible to keep that information secret.
Correct. Correct.
Sean?
Through you, Nancy, I'm not sure, is the department provided any assistance with families getting tests? Like if there happens to be something that has arisen where a student or even a staff member might need to be tested and they just can't find one or get a response quick enough on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. They have testing sites, so you work with the lead nurse and then also our Walpole Board of Health. And there's actually in that guidance that we'll release, and that's on the DESE guidance, there's a link to testing sites where they can go.
Thank you.
I have a few questions also. At one point, Bridget, you mentioned a symptom checklist, and you also mentioned something that could be done at home to attest to the health of the child before they leave home.
Correct.
I know that I've heard that other districts are doing that, and I think it's worth considering here also. That, whether it's the student complying with the rules or the parent and student being honest about not feeling well before they leave school, those are the kind of things that are going to either help us to succeed or fail in this effort of trying to have the schools open. So I'm interested in the idea of an easy electronic way for parents to attest to the fact that, as far as they know, their child is healthy that day, because it reminds people that we're relying on that. What do you know about that sort of stuff?
Yeah, you can do that where it can link to your student management system. So for us, it would be X2. Other school systems are looking at that and are thinking of doing that. I think what we have to do is decide, how often do we do that? Are they doing it just when they register? Are they doing it daily? Are they doing it weekly? But there has been discussion. We were just discussing that at one of our superintendent's roundtable meetings today.
I think it clarifies things a little bit, that we really are relying on parents to keep their children home differently this year. If they are not feeling well, the nurses are going to be overwhelmed with this job if we don't make the rules fairly clear. And I think that it would be worth looking into that possibility.
Okay.
I almost feel like if tonight we could list out some of the things that we're really going to be asking parents to do, giving them the information would be helpful. And I would put that on the list, that they're going to be expected to keep their child home if they're not feeling well, and pick them up if they turn out to be symptomatic at school, because it's a big job for the nurses. And going back to the question that Sean and Kristen were asking about the child who isn't feeling well, I think we're going to have more absences this year, because we're asking people to be careful about not sending a sick child to school. So I don't know whether we should revisit the fact that if it's a kid who just gets sick easily, do we want every one of those days to be a stay-at-home day? Because there are options to it. I'm not asking you for an answer right at the moment, but yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I did want to mention this. The state is releasing their new SIMS reporting system for next year, new coding that didn't exist in years prior. So coding for students who access school remotely, coding for students who are in school, coding for students who might have been absent but are part of the remote learning management system. So these are things that we will be learning and we will be accounting for. And I do think you're right, we will see an increased absence, so making sure that students are still engaged will be, I think, one of the advantages to the flexibility of the hybrid model.
Bill?
Through you, Nancy, just a question, of viability question. I know we said in the presentation where we're relying on parents to make sure they don't send a sick kid to school. What's the viability or possibility of temperature checks as they come into the building or get into the bus? I know I work for the county, and we zap everybody with a temperature check gun before they come into a Norfolk County courthouse. So I know that was a question that kind of came up from a lot of parents in some of the emails. Is that something where I know under normal school circumstances, the principal, the assistant principal is greeting people coming in the door. I know it might not be particularly viable under the normal kind of all come in through one door, but if we're having people enter the building differently, is that something we can at least?
Yeah, Bill, it's a good question, and that's been asked, but that's not recommended at this time. Agree with that?
From DESE, it's not. DESE's not recommending it, or DPH.
We're getting that from our DESE calls, through the from our nurse, from they getting it from the pediatrics in terms of entering and exiting the building, because just because a student might not have a fever doesn't mean that they could have other symptoms. So they're just, at this time right now, they're saying they're not recommending that. But
Okay.
I'll keep you abreast of this a bit, and I'll talk to Kathy Garvin.
All right.
And I'll note that.
Any other health and safety questions? Let's move on then to building equipment, PPE, and ventilation. Sean and then Bill.
For you, Nancy. Mike, could you just share some of the statistics about the system again? I thought they were exceptional, and just, would like to share them again. I mean, it gave me some good confidence that we're well equipped.
So specifically the HVAC systems, they're designed to handle capacities of 30 or slightly over 30 when these buildings were designed. So if you're bringing in a hybrid model of 15 students into a classroom and you're accounting for CO2 clearing out of that room and oxygen being brought in for 30 plus students, you do have a fair supply, a good supply of oxygen coming in and diluting whatever's in the air in the classroom. When you open the windows and you add a steady flow in addition to that HVAC, you're really starting to move air out in and out of the classrooms. Additionally, if we maintain those filters even better than what we've been doing, you're going to increase flow there. And that's a little different than what you might hear in the news. Some people were talking about filtration at a really high level, and that they're trying to pump air through a really dense filter to try to scrape out the viruses or the COVID out of that. And I just don't believe that that's a prudent way to do it. I think you're going to overtax the equipment. You're going to, it's really questionable whether that works. But I think in the long term, you're really going to do damage to the building systems and not for a reason that's going to make a tremendous difference. And this is based on guidance from CDC and DESE.
Thank you.
Bill, you're up next.
Thank you, through you, Nancy. Just the most basic one, and I know Mike may have mentioned this offline beforehand, but I know you've been working with and being in every classroom all throughout the pandemic as we start to look at how to come back. So just, I know a couple of parents had asked, you've kind of taken stock of like what windows don't work so that we're working on them over the summer, what, the way in which each, like the most basic level. So I think a lot of people raise that type of thing and the appropriate type of fan. I know we have a lot of COVID money through the state, so that most kind of basic piece has been in there, correct?
Yes, and I'll use Elm Street as an example. Elm is a central air type of building, right? It brings its air in without the need for windows to be open. We've looked at that building and talked about, okay, we want to provide airflow through open windows. So there are some repairs that need to be done because it just wasn't historically needed in a central air building. So Donnie Anderson, the building maintenance team, the town, have all been collaborating on, okay, if we can fix those, we will fix them. If we can't, I will buy a separate HEPA filter and put that in that classroom to ensure that you either have increased volume of air coming through that room or you have a very high-end filtration going on in that classroom as well. Either way, you're going to be protected as best we can, obviously.
That's a fair point, and I know we're all trying to put this together as we go, but it's hot right now. But what do we do in October, or how do we continue on when it's really cold outside? Are we saying lots of jackets for the fall, and just what are we thinking about for the moderate to long term of this as to try to get through the winter?
That's a good question. I think what we would do is throttle it back a little bit. Don't have the windows wide open. Counting on the heat, it's going to cost us a little more energy-wise. That's okay to keep the heat up in those classrooms, but still keep the supply of air coming in. Classrooms tend to be, and I speak from my experience as a teacher in Walpole, tend to be warmer than colder. And you'll walk around. Sometimes you'll see windows open in the winter. Hey, you know what? That's going to benefit us now. So I don't think we'll have a tremendous issue. I think parents will probably have to dress their kids a little bit warmer. Sweatshirts may be, not just a fashion statement or a practical, clothing to wear. But I think we'll be okay. And, I'll keep my fingers crossed on a vaccine at some point. But I think that's doable. I really do.
I am too, and I know many of our windows aren't like just home windows. They're like 45-degree angle things. So we're taking that all into consideration as we buy the proper kind of air circulatory.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions on health and safety? Mike, I've just got two. Some of the classrooms, not very many, but some of them don't have windows at all. And you were talking about the filters that you're using. And I understand not stressing out the motors too much, but have you changed the filters that you use regularly based on COVID?
So we're at the maximum level that our systems can sustain. So for me to tell you that we increased it or put a heavier, more robust filter in wouldn't be accurate. So we haven't changed them. What we are doing though is that frequency, changing that frequency, keeping them clean. But honestly, the HEPA filtration, I've tried to learn more and more about HEPA filtration. It is a level beyond MERV 13, and without getting into too many details, a lot of people are touting MERV 13 as this perfect solution to filtration of air. A HEPA filter is like a MERV 17, so you're way beyond what you would traditionally have in a MERV 13 filter. So I think it is just a much better solution all around to have that filtration in these separate units. I just ordered 70 HEPA filters for all the internal classrooms, and I'm ready to do another round on any spaces that were not provided. The principals did his inventory of their buildings and said, we need HEPA filters in these areas. So we got that initial order in, and then I'll follow up to make sure all the spaces, and just to be clear, learning environments, so classrooms. It's not that every office will have one. It's where kids are going to be and, larger volumes. That's where we're using them.
Thank you. Any other questions on building equipment and ventilation? How about cleaning protocols? Do people have questions about that? We must be getting tired of hearing you speak, Mike. Okay.
Nancy?
Bill. Oh, go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to start saying just a few questions, I swear. Mike, could you clarify? You gave a good report. Did you say we're adding additional staff, or I know we usually have 2 staffers at night in like an elementary school, and we're swinging them closer to the day. And are we exploring additional staff as well with some of that COVID money?
Yes. Good question, Bill. So the immediate response, and this is kind of a product of a conversation you and I had in the past, and Superintendent Goff and I had as well, that I think the most prudent thing at this point is to move one of those evening custodians into a split shift now. So they'll work in the morning helping with lunches, and then or the afternoon, like midday, and then they'll spill over into their traditional evening shift, and then the other individual will pick up from there. It'll give more of an ability to do disinfecting, sanitizing, high-touch surfaces, doing that stuff during the day when the kids are there, which wasn't always critical until we came across this issue. So I think that's step one. Step two, you're absolutely correct. We have the COVID money. If we needed to use it for increasing staffing, I would absolutely advocate for that. I just don't feel like we're there at this point. We've given and equipped our custodians who cannot wait to get back in. They are very enthusiastic. And I know we mentioned the WTA union. I just want to give a plug for AFSCME and the custodial union. Have just been tremendous. And I had a conversation today with one of our custodians, Scott Manson, and he said, Mike, whatever you want to do, whatever you think is reasonable, whatever is going to make these buildings safe, we're there, we get it, let's talk. And so it's that kind of collaboration on the custodial end that gives me the confidence that let's see how this thing plays out. But very quickly, if we need to, I can bring in additional staffing on overtime if we need to, and that's an immediate solution, or additional staffing with the COVID money. Either way, we are covered as far as staffing goes.
Thank you, Mike.
Carrie.
I think custodians are the unsung heroes of school buildings in the best of times, and that's going to become 1,000% more true this year. I'm wondering what expectations, if any, there will be on the teachers themselves to participate in the cleaning protocols of their rooms, and to a lesser extent, I guess the students too. Will the students be responsible for maintaining their area in any way?
So we just had a conversation about this earlier today, and this is as quickly as this situation evolves, things just kind of move along. And so the idea of eating in classrooms kind of ties into what you asked, Carrie. So there's a different type of product. When you use a disinfectant, you're using a high grade, potent product that kills viruses, and it's very powerful, and it's not something that you want to subject kids to directly. So if the kids are going to be eating in the classrooms, there is a sanitizing product that our cafeteria staff use to spray down tables, and it doesn't disinfect, it doesn't wipe out everything on that surface. It more cleans it, reduces it, and removes it than just wiping it out and killing it. So in our classrooms, in each classroom, we have a tub of wipes. In those wipes is Purell and this new sanitizing product that we're going to bring in. Every teacher has a tub of these wipes, and I will provide more wipes because I have them in inventory, and more product that we need to put in there and keep that supply going. The teachers can use that to, if they wanted to wipe down or control an area that's problematic. They could even give it to the kids if they were going to clean their desk before they decided to eat, right, to make sure the surface is clean. It's sanitized. It's not going to hurt anyone, or alcohol-based if it's Purell. And then they have their meal, and then they can wipe it off. And in effect, I wouldn't say it's as good as disinfecting, but it's a very good way of cleaning the surface that they're using to eat on. And every classroom has those sets of wipes.
Bridget.
Just two things, Bill, to answer your question about the temperature checking. That was guidance released on 7/23, and it was from the CDC, who got that information from the DPH. So I was able to get that answer for you. And I just want to thank Mike about, ordering all of this with the PPE. I know I've said it before, but he has been on top of things. Like when guidance about what we needed to order was in like June, he was on it and it was ordered. Guidance came out in July, it was ordered. Yesterday, it's ordered. So Carrie, Mark, Sean, if your districts are lacking something, you can blame Mike, because he has ordered everything that we need to order and then some. So thank you, Mike, for that.
I'm gonna raid Mike's office and stock up my office.
One last question for you, Mike. Carrie got me thinking about this. If it seems to me like the high school is the only place where the kids are going to be moving from room to room, will they clean the desks before they leave, or another student's going to be sitting there potentially? How are you handling that part of it?
And I think it would be similar to how I answered Carrie's question, that we would use that product, that wipe product, because it doesn't require gloves. It doesn't require a trained individual to put it down. It's simply cleaning the surface, taking care. Again, it's that lesson about responsibility. Take care of yourself, but protect others as well. It's part of the lessons, even at the high school level. And that's a good example of that.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to Bridget and Bill, I think. So, remote only option. There were so many questions about that. I think people want to understand, what does it look like? What kind of commitment is needed? If I sign up and I think it's good, that's great, but am I allowed to switch back and forth? I think there are people need to understand what the remote only option looks like.
So I'll do my best to answer as many of those questions, and I tried to say when I spoke about this a little bit. Part of our problem is we don't have the specifics of exactly the option we're going with right now, and that is because it is contingent upon enrollment, how many parents. And so I know Bridget and I talked about this today, that you're now dealing with an issue, the cart before the horse. A parent would want to know, well, what is the option before I sign up? So what we can say is that it's most likely going to be one of the organizations that's endorsed by DESE. And so the reason why we make that distinction is that this is not going to be, most likely not going to be a traditional remote classroom that is managed by a teacher from Walpole. With that said, I do want to be clear, we are looking into that. We are looking into that as a potential option depending on grade level and depending on available staff. But we do want to say, and we do want to make it clear that this might be a program that is separate from Walpole Public School System, and you're taking virtual classes through an outside organization. In terms of switching back and forth, that does present problems. So if we choose, let's say I'll be more clear. Let's say we end up choosing for many of our students one of the virtual schools. We choose TECA, and a student enrolls in that system. That will not be an easy transition back into our program and back into our schooling. So we will have a time period that we think is fair and reasonable, that students will have to stay enrolled into these systems. If we are able to do a remote model that is managed by our teachers, then you might have a little bit more flexibility of students able to go between them. But the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to mislead our community. This isn't going to be, I do like this, I'm going to bounce over this way, or I don't like this, I'm going to go this way. We really do need to have a clear sense of where people will be going and how that'll impact our enrollment, to make sure we can allocate staff and to make sure that we choose the most cost-effective and also educationally effective system for all of our students.
Make this commitment?
Can you repeat the beginning of that, Nancy, since we have it on mute?
No. Do you know when people are going to need to make a commitment to remote or whatever other option is chosen?
August.
We're just going through our notes.
Yep, hold on, we've got that. If we look at, look at the calendar. What we're trying to do is that we want to give parents the opportunity to have the Q&A on that August 18th. And then if we're able to do that, then we would ask that they would have a decision made by the end of that week, because the principals really need to we need to make those cohorts, and then we need to let the families know, those that are selecting the hybrid model, what cohort they're in before the start of school.
Oh, definitely. Right. Okay. This is my last one for now. You mentioned a cost, Bill. You're not saying the cost is for the family, is it?
I'm really glad you asked that. No, that the cost is the cost the district will assume. But there's a pretty substantial cost between all these programs, and obviously we take into account the cost of our own staffing if we were to go down that model as well. But yes, I'm really glad you asked that. These are not costs at all. The program has no cost to families who choose it as an option. Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, because there is a set of families that really feel uncomfortable, and they have their own reasons for it. Just want to be clear that there are some things that we don't know, but it is an option, and we'll make something work for them.
And I do want to mention that, similar to a lot of districts around us, we have seen an increase in homeschooling requests, and any family that has reached out to us concerning homeschooling, we have communicated that this will be an eventual option as well, so that they're aware that they don't need to homeschool in order to avoid being in school or their child being in school. So I also want to add that.
Thank you. Bill, you have a question?
Like 5 actually, Nancy.
Yeah.
Bill, number one, I appreciate the homeschooling kind of clarification, because I know like a few weeks ago there were a lot of questions about, do I have to get my stuff together now to do that? And I think that's great. I know when you talk about the options for online learning, we talk about TECA, which is, there have been models that we've used in the past in normal times for things like credit recovery and AP classes at the secondary level for kids who want to take AP government. We can't offer it. I think you're right about the cart before the horse. It's like we're trying to push the cart and the horse down the road, like side by side. And I it kind of goes without saying, I feel strongly that like you can't replace a Walpole public school teacher, and obviously we just have to deal with the situation we're in. But as we get more information back from our staff, I think especially at the primary levels, I know in the early stages of talking and trying to re-envision reopening, there was some talk of saying, what if 15% of first grade or second grade district-wide wants to be remote, could we perhaps combine and do a remote first grade, so it didn't have to be a Fisher kid and a Boyden kid, but that, you know, for the parents and the families who feel strongly that they want to keep their children home this year and maybe beyond, that we could provide something closer to normalcy. And I ideally try to discern quickly from our staff those who are immunocompromised or whoever have a whole number of issues that we don't want to kind of parse out. I think that will be good, but from the kind of presentations I've received in the past at the secondary level, I'm less concerned at the high school about someone wanting to take remote courses through a TECA. But I think, you know, just looking at the YouTube thread this evening and questions we've had, I think on the 18th, when you have the parent night, if I would just ask we really listen around how we deliver and how we unpack the way curriculum is going to be delivered. I think some folks raised questions just tonight about a check-in for those who are on the at-home days, even if we do a remote, if we do a hybrid model, if people are checking in.
Can you turn it up? Because I can't hear.
Yeah.
Is he frozen?
I think he's frozen.
That's him.
Yep.
I think you froze, Bill.
Do you want to
you
talk?
there?
I think Bill can talk about that while he unfreezes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, just getting to his point about the differences of levels, just to give you an idea of, even before DESE released the information about remote learning management systems yesterday, we had met with Edgenuity, and we were clear with Edgenuity that we were first looking at packages for grades 6 to 12. Not that we wouldn't consider, K to 5, but I think what I'm trying to say is that very early on we know the difference between levels. And Bill also started to mention about how we use our staff who maybe can't be in buildings as well. And so not only is understanding our own student enrollment important, but having a better grasp of our staff and where our staff is at will also inform us on how we can utilize all staff the best way possible. And so what we're kind of hoping for, what we're hoping for is that today's information about at least the safety measures we're taking within the hybrid model might push maybe some of those initial July survey people from a 3 to a 5 or even a 3 to a 1, but they'll start to have a better sense of what's good, what's right for them. And we might not have the exact number, but we'll have a better sense to be making an informed decision about what program works best for us.
Carrie. Oh, you're muted, Carrie.
Sorry, I just want to clarify for parents who are considering remote who might be listening. So, Bill, what you're saying is that parents need to signal their intent to use the full remote option without necessarily knowing whether it will be in-house or a management system at that point?
As Dr. Goff said earlier, we're going to send that out after our parent forums, and so we are hoping to have more information even after today, really, and we might be able to start to narrow our choice and have even more information by the parent, and then at that point we will ask for people's intent, and I think we'll have to revisit in terms of way down the road, as we get into late August and early September, whether we'll provide an opportunity once we've identified exactly our system, if parents will have a second option to choose that system. But there's a lot of variables there. But I think we'll be thoughtful and transparent throughout the process and give parents as much information as we can, as we know more from our staff and from parents who right now can make the decision that they would or would not send their students to hybrid.
And can you tell me if the cost to the district for the remote learning management system is per pupil, or do we just pay sort of like a licensing fee?
It's both, and even in my presentation, I'm oversimplifying it because even the synchronous options of GCVS and TECA actually even has a asynchronous option that our staff could adopt. So the pricing model is I don't want to say complicated, but it's not easy to summarize. But for the most part, the best way I can summarize it is if we went with TECA or we went with one of the virtual synchronous models, it would be a per pupil for a bundled class, and that's approximately around $1,200 a student. And then if we went with Edgenuity or one of the asynchronous models that we would have to manage, we would probably buy a site license. And so that site license can range for buildings anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. And that would be a content resource that would be available actually to everyone. So even teachers can use that in the hybrid model, some of those content resources, but we would still need the staff to implement that content and that system to the students if we chose that as the best model.
The reason I'm asking is because there seems to be, just based on what I've heard, a really strong preference among parents who want to select remote to have it be run by a Walpole teacher, even if it's not a teacher at their child's building per se. And so I get a little worried just about the financial implications of, paying an outside provider and then perhaps seeing a number of families opt for that individual homeschool model, which is kind of like a double financial hit for us. And so I know you'll gather more information through your surveys and you'll have better data, but that's just something I'm thinking about when it comes to those platforms.
Yeah, and I actually appreciate that feedback, and I think the Walpole teachers are going to deliver the best instruction. So if we can do that, we will. It just will depend on the number of students we're talking about.
Kristen.
I just wanted to clarify that if we do need to go remote, let's say we start hybrid and then something happens and we need to go fully remote, that would look maybe not exactly like it did in the spring, but it would look more like that than adopting one of these remote models that Bill was addressing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we keep using the word remote for both these, but that is very different. So the remote, we keep using the term management system to try to make that distinction. Some of our principals have suggested we don't use remote at all. But the management system is a completely different thing than if we have to go remote. And to be clear, and this is really important, and everyone involved feels strongly about this, if we have to go remote, in other words, the entire district has to go remote, it will look different than it did in the spring. It will be more robust. There will be higher expectations around engagement, attendance, and grades. We don't provide a lot of those details tonight because our hope is to be hybrid. But if we have to go remote, we will absolutely provide and communicate more details. But I'm glad you asked that question. The remote management system is a choice families make for their students if they are not interested in being part of hybrid. If we as a district have to go remote, that is what we are recommending as the model of choice. Again, I apologize for using the word remote twice. It is very confusing. So that's why we'll say if we're talking about the remote management system, which is kind of option, I don't even call it C, option D. It's the far away from the other two.
Thank you.
Any other questions for now about the remote only learning option? Sean.
So there's the two online virtual schools that would be synchronous, and then there's the two additional options that would be asynchronous, but those would be managed / run by a Walpole teacher. Correct?
Yeah, Sean, I think that's a fair summary.
Okay. Is there any talk of having a Walpole teacher teaching Walpole curriculum?
Yeah, that's what I added at the end. That with that said, there's those four, but I don't want to suggest that we've abandoned this idea that we can't manage this ourselves internally. So that's also a potential option as well. Yes.
But there's some more staffing caveats that would have to kind of. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I know it's hard to present on something that's not solid, but there were just so many questions on that topic. I think it gave some answers to people, even though we're still waiting for some others. So thank you. So the next topic that I have is the hybrid model. what does my day at home look like seems to be one of the really big questions. But does anybody else, I know that that's a general one. Let me start with that, and then I'll open it up to everybody else.
Okay, so what does my day look like at home? So that's a good question. The first thing is, as I mentioned when I reviewed at the end of the models, and I went back and I talked about the high school. So there's 4 classes at the high school. I don't have the schedule in front of me to tell you exactly what I need, but we would expect all remote students at the beginning of every period to log on to access their teacher's virtual classroom, the video classroom, either through the Zoom platform or through Google Meet, and that teacher actually would engage those students that are remote and engage the students that are in front of them. There'll be obviously some pedagogical strategies to do that and to do that well, and probably something that we'll improve on as the year progresses and goes on. But we'll also be taking attendance for those students that are remote. So students will be required as part of their remote learning to check in. At that time, and I'm going to keep this pretty general because I think you're going to see this grow and change a little bit, but at that time that will provide an opportunity for the teacher to check in with the remote learning students to ensure they understand what's expected of them during that time period and during the remote learning platform. What I want to be clear about is we are not asking teachers right now to stream the classroom. That's really important because I think that people might assume that if we're having those remote students check in, that they're going to then be able to get the experience of the streamed classroom. We are not asking those students to stream that classroom. Those remote students will be given assignments that they can complete asynchronously or during that classroom period. And then I think you'll find teachers will find ways to engage those remote students in the actual live classroom as well. We had one of our math coaches talk about the excitement of collaboration between students in class and students at home. But the expectation is that students at home will be available during that time, whether they're completing asynchronous work, whether they're engaged fully in the classroom, or whether they're just checking in at the beginning of the period before they go work in the breakout groups. We will also expect for some of our students, some of our special education students, or some of our students that need more guidance, to be able to use that time for maybe some virtual learning and breakout space. Maybe that's a time where they're working with an additional staff member with some of the content that they learned the 2 days before in the live classroom. So we'll have some real opportunities for instruction and pedagogy, and I do think that will grow and adapt as the year progresses.
So continuing on that, Bill, what does the student do who thought that she understood the concept when she was in front of the teacher, and now has a little bit of time in the beginning of the class to check in, and there's work she's supposed to do, but she realizes I need help on this because I thought I got it, but I really don't. Or the person that has a technology problem, like how do they get help when things aren't going smoothly?
The technology question, that's probably more something along the lines of following our ticket system and working with the digital learning coaches at the elementary and middle school, and working with our technology department at the high school. Am I frozen right now?
No, you should be good.
Sorry, I thought I was frozen.
But in terms of the student who didn't get it and is now remote, there could be a number of things that student might do. That student might have available to him additional staff who could maybe do some one-to-one or small group work during the virtual classroom. That student, like we would expect in a traditional school year, might have to ask for some time with that teacher to go over and to review some of those concepts after school. And after school may not look brick and mortar for that student, but teachers are going to be willing to meet with kids, and to ensure, like they do during a typical year, that they're understanding the content. So I don't have a perfect answer for that first question, but I think that there'll be some unique opportunities that will be unique to the virtual and hybrid model, and there'll be some things that'll look traditional, that students will still get extra help and students will still need to see teachers after the classroom period.
just to add on to that, Bill, a little bit, the academic skills classes, at least for students with IEPs, will still be running. So that's another option for students who do have IEPs.
So in other words, they might be getting some of their academic skill help on their remote days because the staff will be assigned to them and they wouldn't have to ask for it. They would be sort of scheduled in, John?
I think depending on the schedule looks, what I would be saying, whether it's in person or remote, those services would still be in place. So it is a forum for kids who need support to access support, whether it's either remote or in person.
Okay, thank you. Kristen.
I have a question to John's point. So if you're in high school, or maybe in middle school, but I'm thinking of my high school student, and you have an academic skills class, and the way you talked about the model is it's, classes 1, 2, 3, 4 are, half the semester, and 5, 6, 7, 8 are the other half. So if you have an academic skills, it's period 1. Does then that not happen in the second half of the year?
I just talked to Stephen Bush about this yesterday, so that was one of our questions, and that's actually something the advisory group is still looking into and working with the team chair. We will still ensure that students get the services full year, and how that happens in the actual schedule. Some of those details are still being worked out, but that's something they're aware of. The term classes and the electives in the term classes also weigh in here as well. The good news is that this model actually, although it'll be very non-traditional for us here in Walpole, is actually a regular traditional schedule in districts around us. So we're actually working with those districts to talk about how they provide those services and the unique way that they ensure all special education students get the services listed on their IEPs. I'm sorry I don't have a perfect specific answer for you right now, but we will.
When John mentioned that.
I literally had that exact conversation with Mr. Bush yesterday.
And that conversation's been going on. I know a couple of weeks ago, myself and Lee Toby and Megan Naylor, the team chair, had a similar conversation. So that discussion has been going on. So.
Are there more questions about the hybrid model? Kristen, yeah?
I have another one. Thinking a little bit more of the teachers. So they have kids Monday, Tuesday, they have kids Thursday, Friday. Are they teaching the same lesson twice to kind of catch both groups?
Yeah, I do think you'll see some repetition in some of the lessons and some of the core content especially. I'm biased. I think we have the finest teachers, so I also think that you'll see some teachers really as they especially with the opportunity for training and PD we have in the beginning of the year, find some unique opportunities to grow and push the curriculum through both models. But I think it's fair to say you're going to see some repetition, especially with the real strong core content that needs to be reviewed in person, science labs where you really want hands-on, in that classroom. I think those things you will see repeated.
Okay, thank you.
Bill.
Hi. I just want to amplify Nancy's point. That might be something to look into. Just high school help desk or something if people are having problems with the Walpole Public School technology that they're trying to use, perhaps, as we seem to be using the libraries themselves less. There may be some opportunity to redivide and reimagine the division of labor in our technology department around that. So I would think the digital learning coaches will be overworked, but maybe some folks who are in the technology centers
students
could
have access
be
to the
tasked
ticket
to help
system
with
last
that.
year.
That
Yes.
might be something in the next month
I
to
thought so.
think about, so that a teacher's not getting a bunch of I'm having problems with my laptop
Yes.
questions throughout the day. I don't know how much that happened, but
Ann Arpin, our digital learning director, implemented with her staff a ticket system last year that was put to the test actually in the remote learning environment and worked really well, and students got a very quick and effective response. Students still tend to go to their teachers to tell them some things, so we might have to reshare a link from time to time, or a teacher helps guide a student how to access that, but it was done really well last year, and we'll continue to grow on that. At the elementary level, we did encourage parents to contact administrators or teachers, but that's something, Bill, I think we can look into, especially as this will now be more of our model about ways that that's effective and efficient, so that we're not overburdening one staff member, but getting things fixed quickly when students can't access the curriculum.
excellent. Thank you.
And I think some of this, I'm sure you're thinking about this already, but the more information that you could post on the website in a Q&A spot, so that, you know, everybody thinks that their computer's going to be working until it doesn't. And then when it doesn't, you want somebody to be able to look and say, where is that ticket thing? You know, so if we can just make sure it's accessible to the parent or the student, that would be good. Any other questions on the hybrid model? Sean?
Thank you, Nancy. I have a couple. The first one is just internet bandwidth related. So if, you know, according to the schedule, everybody in the district, say at 8:30 is, you know, on for a morning meeting in the elementary schools, or it's a middle school check-in or high school, you know, or are all the buildings equipped to have a Google Meet video conference at the same time?
Yes,
they are.
And
I'm getting a lot of messages and I'm not speaking loud enough, so
I feel like I'm yelling. So if people can't hear me, please let me know. But yes, our infrastructure can handle that volume. It's a great question, Sean. I know that MCAS is, you know, is not this, doesn't require the same bandwidth, but we have had some stress tests under that. But we have our infrastructure can handle the weight of all of that virtual learning.
Thanks. And then, so on the parent side, so I mean, I experienced this with my own family, having 3 children and 2 adults attempting to have a video conference at the same time during the spring was entirely impossible, and you know, somebody had to end up making a sacrifice. So, you know, for families, if they have 3 siblings that are home, even 2 siblings, and there's parents that are working, you know, is there going to be some sort of like grace if they're not showing up to something at a specific time? I'm sure there'll be some communication about that. It says, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, I was not able to do it because, you know, the internet was wonky.
We will. The accountability is not meant to be punitive. So we will adapt and work with those families in those circumstances, situations. It's not ideal. We want students to be by video, but all of these methods allow for call-in option as well. And when you're talking about just communication around assignments and work that students should be doing and completing, if we needed to, we could take advantage of that call-in model as well. But yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Accountability doesn't mean punitive. We want to work with people. Technology can be wonky. We've all been on our own leadership calls and someone has to cut out, or we can't hear someone great, like maybe me right now. So we'll work with it and we'll make sure that that all students can access appropriately. And when they can't, we'll figure out why.
Thank you. And then another thing from a parent perspective, so in supporting students as they're learning, you know, I saw in the spring, you know, when everybody was home doing their work remotely, you know, we're going to have that, if the hybrid is the way to go, 3 days a week. You know, is there going to be some sort of consistency to what parents see so that they can be familiar with what the students are using and answer some basic questions or help them find a resource if there's confusion?
Yeah, that's another great question. I can answer that in a few different ways. One is that we're going to be doing parent surveys, you know, as we progress through this model, making sure that we're getting parent feedback. We want parents to take the traditional method of contacting their teachers and contacting principals. The other thing is the Wednesday half day, just to be clear, that when it's remote, that will be full synchronous. So that will not be check-in, 5-minute attendance. That will be synchronous model where teachers will be presenting and working directly with their students. The remainder of that day will be professional development, not just continued training to ensure that we're doing this safely and doing it well, but also for consistency. We know that was something we heard a lot about from parents, how important that consistency was, the messaging, the communication across grade levels. So that's something we're going to work very hard to improve upon, and we're going to build it in time to make sure that we do that well. I'm sure out of the gates we won't be perfect, but that's why we want to provide opportunities for parents to give us feedback, and we do hope that parents contact teachers and principals, you know, maybe not right away, but within a reasonable time to make sure if we're not doing that and there is inconsistency, because that is a nightmare. I had 3 kids in school last year, and there was a difference when the message was consistent and easily accessible to parents, especially at the elementary level.
That's great. Thank you. I think parents are also going to appreciate the fact that there is more synchronous learning going on at home while the students remote.
If I could add, Sean, just because I know we're not talking remote tonight, but going back, if we do go remote as a district, so not the remote management system, but if we go remote as a district, which I know our energy is not focused on tonight, I do want to be clear because I know this was a major question, so I just want to tackle it now. There will be synchronous expectations across the board for all teachers and students. So that I know is a question I've seen a lot, and I know that people have asked. I don't think it's worth diving into great depth right now because we're talking the hybrid model. But if we do go remote, please be aware that there will be higher expectations for synchronous learning. We saw that in the parent surveys. We are responding, and our teachers are excited about that as well.
Just one more, sorry for the barrage. Just along the training aspect, is there going to be anything on the parent side as parents are supporting their students, whether it's resources if your student is struggling with Google Classroom, or you'd like to know how to access your students' assignments or something like that, a place for them to go and figure stuff out?
I think that's an excellent point. You've probably given us a good agenda item for our leadership meeting, and a fair expectation to support our parents so we can best support our students. When they're at home, we need our parents, we need our guardians, we need our caregivers to be informed. So thank you for that thought, and we'll make sure we work with our leadership team and our teachers to do that well.
Thank you.
Bill?
For you, Nancy, just a couple of quick things. I know a bunch of our teachers already kind of, with every daily lesson they send out a FAQ question sheet for parents. I think that's really helpful. I know that a lot of the Boyden ones do, so that might be something we could steal and replicate. But a bunch of people, especially those who are new to the district, have just raised questions about the technology in this remote setting. So could we just recap, who was issued Chromebooks? What's the process for if you're a brand new student? Like, we're obviously going to reach out to you if you're a ninth grader and get you that. And what's the process if a family does not have a device and they're in the lower grades and they're going to need to access this? I know at the outset of remote learning the first time, both Dr. Goff and Assistant Superintendent Hahn and the rest of our administration team were getting folks the devices they need. But just how, I think as we're talking about this now, people are starting to, like, in real time ask questions about, like, how, what is the expectation, where will they get the device, etc.
So Bill, last year, just a reminder, all students 6 to 12 were issued a device, and all students 2 to 5 were given a device if they needed one. This year, we will guarantee, we want to make sure all students have a device available to them. So I believe 1 to 12 initially will, out of the gates, have a device. We will probably still present that option to the elementary parents if they don't want a device. In other words, they have one and another one coming home, but we will have the capability to be completely one-to-one. I do want to mention, it is probably worth mentioning, that at the state level, there are major delays in Chromebooks. We have ordered hundreds of Chromebooks. We don't know if we are one of those orders that is being delayed. We think even with the delay, we'll have enough Chromebooks for all of our students 1 to 12 next year. But I do want to mention that is a problem, probably actually on the country level, but definitely at the state level. So again, 6 to 12, all students were issued devices last year. 2 to 5, they were available. Next year, 1 to 12, they'll be issued and available, and only won't be sent home if a parent actually says, I don't need another device at home. We are all set. This is what I want my student working through.
And we just got notification actually this morning that we had 300 that we were waiting for. 150 will be in shortly, and that'll just leave us waiting for 150 more. So we're actually in pretty good shape.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Doctor.
Kristen?
I have a question sort of about the in-person aspect. And I know this is sort of forward-looking, but is there a way, maybe especially for kids at elementary school, we can sort of do a video tour of what the class might look like, what the school might look like, just to give some kids, especially I know the younger kids and they're kids at other levels who have a little anxiety around what this might look like, but is there a possibility to do a video tour or even take some pictures to give them a sense of what they might expect?
Yeah, I can take it, and then you can add. Yeah, the Leadership Council, we were just talking about that this week, and I know, like, for example, when they did like a move-up day in the spring for the middle schools, those principals actually videotaped and did a walkthrough and did a video for those students. So, just definitely outside the box thinking to help these students transition, back into the classroom and really help them get, especially, you're right, Chris, and even our new students coming in. Do you want to add to that, Bill? Because I know you've got a couple of things.
I do know at the middle school, just had a conversation with those principals today, they are rethinking how they're gonna do sneak peek. It's gonna look different than it has in years past, but they are gonna get sneak peek in, they are gonna have students in the building. I do know that your question was also asking about, though, every kid might be a little bit nervous what that classroom looks like. So that's a great idea, and we can either utilize some of those videos that we've already taken, or once we get some of these classrooms set up, take some videos and get it out to the community for everyone to see, because we won't be able to have that open house of 300 people going through the building, but we should get that information. It would be nice to preview what you're going to go into, not just for the kids but also for the parents.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next topic of kindergarten model. Are there people that feel like they have questions or need more information about what's being offered at the kindergarten level? Carrie?
Just a quick clarifying question. I know we're talking about bringing in the full population of kindergartners. Is that with a distance of 6 feet or 3 feet?
That is a distance of 6 feet. So what we did is we had to we're securing additional staff to be able to, and we have the space. So, and if you remember last time, we said we had the space and we just need to take a look to make sure we can secure the staffing, working with Mike, for sure that, we're able to reallocate and be able to secure the staffing for that. So, 6 feet apart, reduced population.
I really like the idea of having the separate forum for the kindergarten parents, because I think they have a lot of unique
Yes.
questions and circumstances. They're entering the district for the first time. They're also the only ones who are paying tuition K through 12. So there's a lot of, I think, variables for that population. And so I bring that up only to wonder if it might be beneficial to survey kindergarten parents specifically about their wants. I know some parents have reached out to us about, they actually might be more comfortable with hybrid than with full in person. And some have questions about half day versus full day. And so I'm wondering if getting more solid information from that population would be beneficial to our planning.
Yes, and we're actually looking to try to have that meeting more at the end of next week. I'm just waiting to talk to one of the principals who will be working with me to set up that Q&A.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else about kindergarten? That's good news that you were able to figure out how to make it happen, because that'll be a meaningful first year for kids. So thank you. Okay, my next topic is special education students, and we've covered a lot of it. I know that when we were talking about transportation, we didn't talk about special ed transportation. John, is there anything different that families need to know, or is it pretty much status quo, or anything you have to say about the transportation piece?
I think there's going to be some discussions that have to be made. So in terms of keeping the distance that we're going to need to keep, what is the fleet of vans going to look like? What are the runs going to look like? I think there are some details that are going to need to be ironed out. Of course, students who require van transportation as a service would certainly get it. But how that's going to be implemented, I think there's a lot in terms of details that have to be discussed with us and our vendors.
And does that general message apply to special ed students and families if the family can provide the transportation? Is that something that you would encourage them to do in the same way that we're encouraging the regular ed student?
Absolutely. And if van transportation is a part of the IEP and the parent is agreeing to transport the child themselves, we would reimburse them for mileage at the state rate.
Great, okay, so that's good to know. Do other people have any questions related to special education? Carrie?
I'm just curious about the ESY program so far and how it's been going from a health and safety perspective, just in terms of students being able to follow the protocols, and also if there have been any incidents of symptomatic students, positive tests, etc.
I think by and large, the students have done really well with it. Distancing has been really good. Students have really understood the concept of personal space and maintaining the distance. Classroom setups are really good in terms of desks being far apart. Teachers have been wearing the PPE. I must admit, the first time I saw a couple of teachers in full PPE garb with the shields and the gowns, it was a little, it was interesting. It was unexpected, and it affected me when I first saw it. So, but the kids have done really great with it. In terms of anything that's happened, we did have a fire drill on Tuesday at Elm Street, and so the kids responded to that really well. And even outside on the lawn, waiting for the clearance to go back, kids maintained distance and were separated, and the staff did a wonderful job. So I think it's been a nice experience for kids to sort of break the ice and get back to seeing some familiar faces. It is short. We're doing just an hour a day this week and next week. But I think the teachers felt it was important to have the kids in and break the ice and get a head start on fall.
Sean, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess this is the right spot to ask. This is a kind of crazy time, and our students are experiencing a lot, and returning to school will certainly, jar even, the most on-point student. Has there been any talk or moves to implement some additional SEL resources, or, provide opportunities for students, whether they generally require services or might need services for the first time, as far as counselors or something like that, to have access to that?
Taking place really for all of the students in the district, and assessing, on a number of levels. What are students with IEPs going to be coming back? But what are students who, didn't have that level of need prior to COVID? What are they going to be coming back? And what do we need to be ready for in terms of what their experiences have been over the last 6 months? So absolutely, those conversations have occurred.
And Sean, in terms of your question around SEL, I actually met this morning with the coordinator for our SEL steering committee. The Castle has released some really good guidance around remote learning procedures, which we would probably apply to hybrid. And I think that'll be integrated in the PD work we do, not only in the beginning of the year, but on Wednesday, on some of those best practices for SEL in this model.
Thank you.
Along those same lines, it might be helpful if the counselors were able to send something out to families even during the professional development days, and sort of prepping the families for conversations that might be helpful to have with the students. Any other special ed? I know there were a bunch of questions online about that, and if an IEP is due to be evaluated, you're going to be able to stick to your schedules and provide services, and there may be modifications, but people don't need to go out of their way to get in touch with you if they're expecting to do an IEP review or something like that.
Yeah, we're still going to do meetings, and we're still going to work on our timelines with meetings. That'll look very similar to what it did in the springtime. So they'll be virtual. I think the issue with doing virtual meetings, and first of all, we'll be doing that so we can, decrease the frequency of folks coming into the building,
right.
In terms of parents and advocates and things like that. The issue that we'll be talking about with principals and team chairs around virtual meetings is finding space for the teachers who attend the meetings. So virtual meetings at home are great, but a teacher can't do a team meeting in front of a classroom of students. So we're going to have to find some spaces for the teachers to gather, even if it's remotely, and run the meetings. So that's something I'm talking to team chairs about and principals.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Any other special ed questions? Moving on to secondary students will not be getting pass-fail grades. They'll be getting real grades. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I guess my last couple of topics are daycare issues. Do we know anything more about whether the rec department's going to be able to help out with that? Would be the first question.
Yeah, good question, Nancy. We're still working with the rec department. We need to take a look and wait until once school committee votes on the model, and then we send the information out to families and look at the numbers that we're looking at. But they are working with that. They're looking at what areas they're able to have. They're also working with Melissa. We've had meetings with Jim Johnson. Mike, feel free to jump in, as well as Kathy Garvin, Maria Hall, thank you. There have been several meetings to determine the regulations, how many students can be in a particular area, food delivery, delivering desks that we need in order for students to do their remote assignments, because they'll be expected to complete those assignments, as well as some other enrichment time.
So more information to be coming over the next couple of weeks about that potential.
Correct.
Another daycare type question that I have is there are a lot of high school and college age kids who babysit very regularly, and they may be doing that and helping out families right now. But we're saying that if it's their day to be remote, that they have to be available to check in with their teacher.
Yes.
Is there a way for a responsible student to ask for the opportunity to be a daycare provider? And I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I think that it's something worth considering. I think there are going to be some families where the older child just needs to babysit the younger child because that's how they've been getting by for the last 5 months. And I think that some kids are responsible enough to get their work done, but I know they'd be missing out on something too. I just wonder where we stand on that part of the daycare need.
I mean, short of, like you just said, it's tough to give a clear answer right now. I can say two things. One, we know that DESE's been really clear that we have to have higher expectations for students in the remote learning environment, and we want to be true to that. But that said, we're asking this entire community right now to be fluid and flexible with what we're doing here. And I think that you're going to have principals and administrators and teachers that in very unique circumstances, you're dealing with an older child who's working with their family, and that communication is clear from the family, and there's a set of guidelines on how we're going to manage it and how we're going to ensure that kid's getting the education he or she needs. I think that same flexibility and fluidity needs to be set by us as well. I've frozen again.
No, we should be good.
Can't ever tell if I'm frozen.
You were muted, Bridget.
Okay. No, we're good.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions related to daycare? Bill?
It's related. The extended day program as well, like, is that still going to exist in a hybrid form? Is it completely off the table?
Good question. I'm going to let Mike, you want to take that one? I can fill in if or I can take it either.
Just
way.
repeat the question. I lost the beginning of it.
So,
What's extended day going to look like, Mike? Or is it?
So I think for kids that are in school, obviously it would be dependent on the cohort that you're in, whether you're in school, would look similar. I've spent a lot of time talking with Devin about the requirements, the expectations of social distancing, and how are we going to manage a lot of kids in a school where we didn't have to worry about those things before. We used to have 70 kids at Boyden School, and we'd be able to manage that pretty effectively. That's not going to be the case this year, and honestly, we're not going to have that many kids in the school to begin with. So he's looking very closely at the impact of COVID on that program and what PPE, what staffing levels look like, what kind of programming he can bring in this year.
Mike, I'm gonna stop you for a second because we just went down for a second. The internet must have gone down. What?
Mine's out
Okay.
too.
Oh, do you guys
But
want
it's
this?
wireless.
Oh, it is? Do you want this?
You're on the wireless, right? Yeah.
Yep,
So
just
it'll-
pause.
It'll come back on.
Okay.
You can see it's working. This happens a lot here.
Do you want this one?
Just so you know, the community can't see you, but everyone in the meeting can still hear you. You can ask if you want us to wait or continue.
No, they're waiting. I told them to wait. Just-
Yeah, it's nothing to do with you. It happens. We work here, so
It must be like an intermission.
it happens all the time. You're not gonna be able to join. Internet's still out.
Is it the Zoom? You only get
It's
an hour
it's
and 45 minutes,
no.
and then it shuts off.
It's a wireless. It's a wireless.
It's a wireless issue here at Town Hall.
We are still on YouTube.
Okay. Oh, we are.
So maybe
They
you
can
keep
hear us on
going.
YouTube. Yep.
Maybe you can keep going then.
So do you want to can we keep going while
I
they,
think we're behind on YouTube, though. Like, there's a delay.
Yeah, there is a delay.
People can
I
hear
think it's
us.
significant.
oh, but people can hear us though. They can hear
Okay.
us.
All right, I think we're coming back now.
So
I just
we
came
should be
back now.
coming back. Give it about 30
Did
seconds.
you log out? Because you might have to log back in now. It's coming up now.
So they had the audio on YouTube, not the video.
Right. So it should be coming back up.
You go public usage here.
They have the audio on YouTube, not the video.
Right. So it should be coming back up.
I can give everyone the history of the town seal while we're waiting.
You want to see if you want to give it back? Look at my charger.
I can't believe nobody took you up on that offer.
Ouch. Well, it depicts the old sawmill of Eliza Lusher and Joshua Fisher on the Neponset River, and it was actually in 1924, Walpole High School senior came up with the.
Bridget, how do you mute him? Mute him, Bridget.
All right. Just putting in
She
the
actually
password
did.
and should be, yeah, so I know that people can hear us, they just can't see us, only on the YouTube channel though.
Hey, Bill, did I answer your question, or are you going to hit me up as soon as this comes back on?
Oh, me? Oh, yeah.
No. John Quealy's here because it kicked him off too, so.
Oh, no.
So you can join us down in here at 6 feet apart.
Sit on the big stage.
You need your mask.
I'll sit over here.
Okay.
Bridget, you guys are welcome to come over to my house. I have 4 other seats right here.
Well, Bill Hunt had to go get his charger anyways because his computer is almost out of juice.
We can do all this planning for, remote and technology and all this, and then reality comes into the equation.
Mine's working fine. Let me see if he needs. Jean- Are you looking for the password?
Do all this planning for, remote technology and all this, and then reality comes into the equation.
That's the delay.
Do you know if the town hall Wi-Fi has settings that turn it off at like 10 o'clock?
No, I think we've been here plenty later than 10 o'clock.
We try not to make a habit of it.
Oh, here we go. Mine's working, so we're gonna let cable in now.
Good.
We are back up.
There was a YouTube question more about the artist on the town seal. It was Ms. Edna Buck in 1924. Not Buckley, but Buck. But I'm done now.
Okay, so we were at extended day, Mr. Frischer.
I'm on my iPad.
So that's it, Bill. I covered it all. Any questions? So I guess the long and short is it won't look the same. It'll be dependent on if the kids are in school. Numbers will be much lower, but spacing will have to be greater. Devin Clifford is looking at different programming options that would work better with smaller groups of kids so that we keep them separated but still entertained. So we're working hard on making that program look different, but still as good as it's always been.
Good. Any other daycare related questions? Bridget, have you had staff members talking about the fact that one of the things that they're concerned about is they're going to need help to be in person because they have young children themselves?
Yes, daycare is a concern, is an issue, and we are working on that. Not only with, in district, but we're working at that with other superintendents across the state.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say that. Good, good. Does anybody else have any daycare questions? My last topic is just communication and collaboration, and you pretty much mentioned it already. I think staying in good two-way communication with everybody, with the teachers, with the families, is going to be key to making this work. And I think that hopefully tonight can be the first piece of pretty clear information that we can give to families about what some of their responsibilities will be if we're able to come back into school using the recommended model. But communication and collaboration are going to be key to the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Any other questions on anything? Because we do need to vote on this, and we've spent a lot of time talking about the recommendation that the administration has given, but we can talk more about any topic that anybody wants to bring forward at this point. Everybody's getting tired. Okay, then we're at the point where we need to talk about what we think we should do. Who wants to start? Go ahead, Sean.
Sure. The administration presented a fantastic plan and presentation tonight. I appreciate the graphics on the schedule and the opportunity to ask questions. And I would be in support of moving forward with the plan. You know, we recommended you dive deep at the end of the previous school committee meeting, and you certainly did that, and made meaningful progress and have a actionable plan in place that I personally would support.
Kristen.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really impressed. I think you guys have thought of just about everything. I know that there's no foolproof plan, but I think you've made a lot of progress. As a parent who has a child who really struggled during remote learning, I would love to see him back full time, but I agree that we need to bring the kids back safely for the students, for the staff, for the teachers. And I feel like the model that you've outlined really tries to address everything. It's sort of I don't want to call it a compromise plan, maybe the Goldilocks plan, right? It's a little bit of the best of everything. And I think it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility. Should we hopefully be able to go back in person, or, you know, should we be at a point that we have to go back remote? It sounds like this plan also gives us that flexibility. So I'm in support of the hybrid plan.
Carrie.
I just want to say, I guess, take a moment to recognize the tremendous burden that was placed on the shoulders of the district. You know, essentially, we needed to figure out our own plan for our own schools. And public school districts have been really unique in that way in terms of the response to this pandemic. It's not as though Walpole had to come up with a plan for opening Walpole's restaurants. That was a state decision. But yet here we are with Bridget and Bill and Mike and all of LC, you know, really having to take on this tremendous logistical, health and safety, academic, social, emotional, you know, mess, and try to figure out how to make it work in the safest way possible for the greatest amount of people. And I think that all of you have done tremendous work, and you deserve a lot of recognition for all the effort that you've put in. We know we're not going to make everybody happy. We know that, you know, over the next few months, all of us, especially, you know, teachers and parents, are going to have a lot of frustrations and anger and grief and anxiety and fear about what's coming. But I think, you know, certainly nobody could have asked for more than what you've given us tonight. And so I want to say thank you for that. And I am supportive of your efforts.
Thank you,
Jen.
Carrie.
Jen, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. I wanted to say that I understand that there is a lot of parents who feel that, you know, remote learning, that experience was not great. And, you know, we had to react to a lot of things in the past that were sprung upon us. And at this point, you know, we really are thinking through what that's going to look like if we have to go there and the days that students are to be home. On the flip side, there's a lot of parents who have a lot of anxiety about kids returning to the classroom at all. You know, we've heard from everybody, and I agree with what Kristen said, that no matter what bucket you fall in, to me the hybrid does seem like it's a compromise. And you know, while I may personally prefer we go in a different direction, I totally understand we're given certain guidelines from the state that we have to follow. And working with that, I reiterate what Carrie said. Our superintendent and administrators have done an amazing job with a very, very difficult circumstance. And I all the effort that you put into this, it's just been amazing. So I'm going to vote to support what you guys have come up with, because I really think you listened to all the questions and you came up with a very comprehensive plan. And I think that remote is going to look different going forward in terms of consistency and tweaking things. And I really appreciate you listening to all the feedback and surveying parents in order to make this just, you know, is the best we can under very difficult circumstances. So thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Well said, Jen. Bill, do you want to go next, or do you want me to?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. I am supportive of the hybrid model. I think I'm solidified in that by the ability of a parent to make the individual choice to keep their child home, and I'm looking forward to a more rigorous explanation in the coming weeks of what keeping your child home through the remote model will be like. But I'm not going to throw out a million cliches, but we're trying to rise to an occasion that was thrust upon us. And I think many well-meaning people in this district are working very, very hard, and we're just trying to do the best that we can for the greatest number of students, and give parents the ability to make some decisions about their own safety, while their children's safety, while linking it closely with the data from the state and with the DPH. So I said last meeting that I liked that there were the bones of a full remote if we needed to do that already in place. And I understand we can't give everyone all of the answers, as much as we try to be as responsive as possible. So it's not in any way ideal. I'm grateful that we're going to have another meeting, for parents to voice concerns on the 18th, and it sounds like a couple weeks in, also get some additional feedback. So I think as long as we're continuing to register what our staff, our teachers, and our parents are feeling, and as well as our students, I can be supportive of a hybrid model.
Great. Mark, how about you?
I support the hybrid model as well as kind of the least bad option. Just kind of a different comment compared to other people. I think it's important parents to, parents are going to be upset one way or the other. I mean, the parents don't want their kids in school full time, or parents that don't want their kids in school. You can't let the kids read that in your face and in your actions, because it becomes self-fulfilling. If you don't have confidence in how the school year is going to unfold, your children are not going to have confidence in how the school year is going to unfold. And I would ask parents to try to put their best foot forward if they could and help us out.
Good point, Mark. I also feel strongly that we need to make a decision tonight. I think it helps parents and teachers and all of you administrators that have been working so hard to put us in the best position for the fall if we give you some clear guidance tonight. I think that all of us have struggled because it's a difficult decision when the health and safety of children and staff members are involved. And I keep going back to a couple of words, but trust is one of them. And I think that we're asking for the trust of the community. And I think that we respect the fact that we're asking a lot of the parents, we're asking a lot of the teachers, we're asking a lot of everybody who works in the schools, and certainly the administrators. I think that we owe it to them to say that we're going to enforce rules seriously, that this could and should work. And I've seen the people of Walpole come together during really hard times. And I think we almost, want to put it out there in a similar way to what Mark just said. Let's challenge the Walpole community to do this right. That it's not going to be hard for the bus drivers, because everybody's going to say, no, you've got to wear your mask on the bus. It starts with the parents, but I think we can all be part of reinforcing that message. And I think people's health and safety is so important that if we all work together, I hope that we can be one of the towns that breaks the expectations and does a good job with this. But I've seen the people of Walpole do that before. This is an important one. But I would say there's no zero risk scenario that we can give you. We're asking for cooperation, trust, and communication. And I think the administration has put together a compelling argument. There's a lot of work still to be done on everybody's part. And we appreciate what you've done so far. We really have. Anybody else want to revisit any other points? If not, we will take a vote. And the motion is to approve the fall opening plan as presented, with the understanding that the situation is fluid and could possibly change. Somebody want to make that motion, please?
Moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Buckley and somebody to second it?
Second.
Second, we'll give it to Kristen. Any further discussion? All right, I need to do a roll call, so Mr. Buckley,
Aye.
Mr. Breen,
Yes.
Ms. Syrak,
Yes.
Ms. Gayotzis,
Yes.
Mr. Ahern,
Yes.
Ms. Denizio, Carrie, are you there?
Yes.
Thanks. And Ms. Gallivan, yes. Thank you so much for this work. We value all the pieces of communication. We really do appreciate the leap of faith that the community will hopefully go along with us in terms of being as supportive as they possibly can, and the teachers as well. So thank you for all the work.
Nancy, just one thing, and you know, when you mentioned the collaboration, it's just, it really has been, and thank you all school committee for recognizing, you know, the hard work of the administrative team. You know, even, you know, when I'm calling either Nancy and Bill at all hours of the night, or Jim Johnson, or even Ann Arpin, or Kathy Garvin, you know, they just pick up the phone, they answer it, and we work through a problem. I know that our principals have been, they've been working day and night, so we appreciate everything that we're doing, and I can't say enough about Mike, John, Bill. We've had some really late evenings and some late night texts and phone calls and early mornings. We've seen more of each other than our families, so we're lucky that we like each other, because we'd be in serious trouble if we didn't. So thanks, guys.
Great. Okay, we've got a couple of other things that we have to do. The revised calendar requires a vote tonight, Bridget, is that correct?
Yes, it does, because we're recommending the school start date as the 14th for our students. The staff will still come in on the 31st, and then those, you know, you've already voted through the hybrid model, so that would be the only change. And then obviously, when you're looking at the calendar, we had to move some of those holidays. You know, we made those the remote days so students could get more in-face time, as we talked about. And right now, the last day for students would be June 15th, but that is to change. We're gonna have to revisit this calendar, you know, very frequently. But it's more concerned about this start date for students and getting this calendar out to the community. And we'll link it to the plan too.
Good. So
Just to
go ahead, Jen.
Well, I just wanted to clarify, are we just voting on the change in the start date? Because the cohort A and cohort B that was presented, I had a follow-up question on that. I don't want to get into it now if we're just voting on the calendar as presented with the change in the start date.
I think it would also be just it would be on the end date too. You know what I mean, like in terms
The beginning and the end, okay. I just should, I can tell you what my question was, just from briefly seeing it. It looked like Thanksgiving and Christmas both would impact cohort B.
I
Were there-
know that too.
And so that was something we could work through
Yeah.
offline, but I just didn't want to take a full vote on that. And
Correct. We'll work through that. We'll work
Okay.
through all those with the hybrid.
I noticed that the same way, Jen, that, that's more of a tweak, but we're voting on the concept of the hybrid model, that the teachers will come in for the first 8 days before the students arrive, and that's all about the professional development that they need for health and safety, but also to develop a real high-quality program and get the professional development that they need.
Right. And just knowing that the 2 original PD days that were originally built in, those we can bank. So let's just say we go from a hybrid, we swing into a full remote, or could go the other way. We might need to use some time to build in, but those other PD days that we've had, the 2 at the beginning, will be used for professional development time, because we do need to do professional development throughout the year, other than, reopening.
Yeah, that's the part that I was hoping you would explain a little bit. So what we're saying is there will be a professional development day on election day. And when you look at the calendar, that will be adjusted. That's a week that will be adjusted, and the cohort A will come in on Monday and Wednesday that week, and cohort B will come in on Thursday and Friday as usual. But somewhere else within the year, we're going to vote to hold at least 2 more professional development days, and at most 4. Is that correct?
Yes. At most it would be 4, and there's a potential, if we're not using them during the year, that we would not impact student schedules, and they would actually be put at the end of the year.
Determined about the remaining professional development days based on need. But what we're voting on tonight is that the start of the school year will be September 14th. And did you want us to vote on the end date too, Bridget?
It doesn't matter. I mean, you can. I mean, that always changes, even with, in past with snow days or anything like that. And that might look different too. Who knows? The snow days might not be snow days anymore. That may count as a school remote day. So we'll wait for DESE on that guidance.
Okay, so the calendar change is the start date, the concept of the hybrid model and how it will be implemented, and we know for sure that there's a professional development day on election day.
Right, and the teachers will be returning on the 31st and have their professional development days on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Great. Okay, we need a motion to accept the calendar Bridget just described.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Jen. I'm giving it to Bill for the second, and roll call vote. Bill?
Aye.
Mark?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Jen?
You can go home.
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Carrie? And Nancy, yes. Okay, great. That's done. Next topic is capital. I don't have the agenda in front of me. Is it capital budget?
It's a capital vote. It's the FY21 School Department capital request as reviewed at the school committee workshop held on Friday, July 24th, by School Business Administrator Mike Frisha. A vote is requested for FY21 capital in the amount of $260,000.
My question earlier today was, we need to get the internet fixed at Town Hall so this doesn't keep happening. Can somebody please answer where we are with that?
All right, I'll try to take this one on. So it's been somewhat of an ongoing issue. We were able to work around the difficulties we've been experiencing with wireless. I'll speak for myself, by installing a switch and hardwiring into my computer. That's why I find it easier just to work from home on these video calls. But that is kind of a workaround. So I spoke to one of the technology people at Town Hall who speculated it might be an issue with the way our computers are set up. Bridget and I were going to try to modify that, probably Bill as well, and see if that worked. Tonight doesn't give me a lot of hope that that's going to fix everything that's going on there. But in a conversation with Bridget and I and Jim Johnson, Jim assured us that if there is a fix that needs to be put in place, he would support doing that, whether it be financial or otherwise. I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, Nancy, but that was my best effort.
So you feel confident that we don't need to prioritize it in the capital budget list?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Can somebody read off the items that are on our capital budget list? I read it before, but I don't have it in front of me.
Mike, you got it? Do you have it in front of you? If not, I can read. Okay.
Yep. So first priority was there are 3 top priorities. They're all related to projectors in our buildings. Our projectors are 6 to 7 years old. They have failed and been replaced in some cases, but the larger portion of them district-wide are at the end of their useful life. This proposal would fulfill approximately half of those projectors and would go a long way to really solidifying what we have out there right now. So the proposal for the elementaries was $50,000. The proposal for the middle schools was $50,000. And the proposal for Walpole High School was $20,000. The high school has done a fair amount of replacements already within Stephen M. Bush's operating budget. So they are better positioned to they have less that are failing, so they're in a better position. That's why it's $20,000 rather than $50,000. Any questions on projectors? You want me to keep going?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Priority number 2 was the Walpole High School engineering lab and computer replacement. So it's a lab that's used for engineering, robotics, and a variety of higher end computing needs that go on in that lab. There are 2 labs that needed to be replaced. I believe this is the second one that would take care of those needs. It's $30,000. These are PC products that are somewhat more expensive. They're higher end computing, so they're expensive for that reason as well. So that replacement cost would be $30,000. Questions on that item? Okay. Priority number 3 is the production technology shop equipment replacement. So what we traditionally have called in the past our wood shop. It is much more than that. It involves much more higher end programming and production related studies. Very antiquated lab that needs to have a lot of equipment replaced. We've had a couple of injuries related to the equipment in that space. And so I would really advocate that this is a safety request as well as just upgrading of equipment. That request is for $50,000. Any questions on that one?
No.
Okay, and then finally, the 4th priority is for Walpole High School. It is for a new electronic school sign. Stephen Ambush and I met out front in front of the high school and had the vendor come in who's on the state contract. They are the same vendor who provided the sign for the Walpole Police Station. Very robust communication tool. It is a traditional looking sign, but it also has very good ability. It can be programmed wirelessly, remotely, all kinds of functionality in the digital sign that would provide families who maybe do not have the wireless access or are traveling, happen to be going down Common Street, and this sign would do a very good job of conveying important information to the community as a whole. And that sign is between $40,000 and $60,000. The request is for $60,000. So the total FY21 capital is $260,000. Bridget and I have both had several conversations, and you as a school committee have heard these to the prior presentation with the town administrator, who most recently supported all these items. As funded, I don't know if that's what will finally be done, but we had some very good conversations about these items.
Mr. Buckley.
Through you, Madam Chair, very, very quickly, just for folks who may be listening in along. This is capital stuff that we do every year. It's part of a capital plan. It's distinct from all the state money and federal money we have for COVID prevention, which is why there's no COVID stuff in there. This is more things that just that are part of a rolling list of capital needs for the district. So I think I just want to anticipate the question coming up, though, like why aren't we putting masks in there, things of that nature? It's because we have dedicated pots of state and federal money for that, and this is more for general operating and structural issues around the town, in our schools.
Good point. Thank you. Any other questions? Mark.
I would like to voice my apprehension about the budget for the sign. Just given other budget uncertainties, it seems like an extra or a luxury as opposed to a necessity.
I would actually agree with you. In terms of prioritizing, it's the bottom of the list as far as I'm concerned. But I would support the request, knowing that we usually don't get everything that we ask for. But to me, that's the least important on the list. Bill?
And if we do, I mean, can we go on the $40,000 side, not the 60? I don't know how much the sign up the street is, but I mean, there's literally a sign 2 football fields away doing the same purpose. So I'm not going to fight for that one either. We could put it on, but.
Carrie?
Just going back to the projectors for a second. We had talked in our workshop about projectors that are wired in to desktops in the classroom versus wireless systems where somebody can walk in with a mobile device and kind of plug in to whatever projectors in the room, just kind of giving more flexibility to teachers, especially where they're getting lots of new devices to manage remote learning. And so I was just curious if there was any update on that.
So I had a long conversation with Ann Arpin about that exact question. And I asked her to reach out to Sean because it's 2 technology people talking who understand this a lot better than I do. It seemed like there were some barriers to having exactly, Carrie, what you're mentioning. And I don't know if that's specifically device related, a laptop versus a Chromebook, or if there's more to it. But I think Sean, knowing that he spoke to Ann, might have more details.
Yeah, she did give me a call, which I was very appreciative of. And I think it's more infrastructure related. And with the infrastructure problems comes a significant cost. So that amount would probably jump an additional 500 to 1,000 per projector to support that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's, Carrie, that was something we were really concerned about because we wanted to go further with the replacement versus the options that each one would have, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, and Ann did articulate that she'd be up for testing some things and seeing if with the installation of what these are, that they can provide that. Because, I mean, there is significant value, especially during the school year where multiple teachers are going to be using a classroom. So, you know, I would encourage her to do that.
Any other questions related to capital? If not, I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Buckley to accept the $260,000 request.
Second.
And a second by Mrs. Syrak. All those roll call vote. Mr. Buckley?
Aye.
Mr. Breen?
Aye.
Ms. Syrak?
Aye.
Ms. Gayotzis?
Yes.
Mr. Ahern,
Yes.
Ms. Denizio,
Yes.
and Ms. Gallivan, yes. So 700. That takes us to your report, Bridget.
No, it just goes right to MSBA. My report was the reopening of schools. I think everybody's heard enough of me tonight.
Easy going, that's great.
No, it's just the MSB update is under old business, and I think we were just going to say that we are continuing to meet with Compass and Tape, who is our architect. We held a school building committee meeting virtually a couple of weeks ago. And, we're continuing, we did have those 2 virtual staff meetings, visioning statements with our, with our staff. And we'll continue that when we reopen next month. But, obviously our priority is before us right here, what we discussed tonight. But just to know that we are still in communication, we're still meeting, Mike and I, Bill, are meeting with Compass and Tape, along with Patrick Shield and Jim Johnson.
Do you have anything you want to add, Mark?
No, Nancy, I don't.
Okay. I just noticed there was a packet that we got that explained that we will have some hurdles this fall that we will have to participate in too. So it would be a good idea. Maybe we can share that information with the whole school committee. They're talking about having a community forum at the end of September or beginning of October, and having to submit the preliminary report by November. So we do need to start thinking about it from our point of view as well. But it was exciting to see. Anything else about MSBA?
No.
Okay, we talked about subcommittees potentially. Is there anything that the policy subcommittee wants to talk about? Or are you guys gonna work together and see if you need to schedule a meeting? Can we leave it at that? Sounds good. And then the legislative news, the good news that we got was that local aid has not been cut for FY21. So that's just a positive thing, in addition to the fact that the state and federal government has been helping Walpole out with COVID money. So we, so far so good as far as that goes. Anything else? And I just need a motion to adjourn, please.
Do we have warrants?
Oh, sorry. See, I don't have my.
That's okay, I have it.
Okay.
So we have,
Yes.
list of warrants, dates and amounts, dated August 3rd, 2020.
Yes, I think that's me. And if I mess this up, somebody please step in. I would like make a motion to approve the expense warrants as listed in your packet. Do I need to read each number?
No.
Yes. No.
Yeah, not the dollar amount, but the
warrant number.
Warrant number, please.
Okay. The following expense warrants: number 220053, number 220054, number 221002, 221002, 220055, 221003, 221004, 221005.
Very impressive, Sean. For the first time, very impressive.
Second.
We have a motion by Sean, a second by Carrie?
Yes.
Okay. Quick roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Carrie?
11
Yes.
troubles.
Nancy? Yes. Thank you. Do we have any payroll?
Yes.
You're up again.
I would like to make a motion to approve payroll warrants, number 2052 PA, number 2054 PA, number 2102 PA, and number 2104 PA.
Second.
We have a motion by Sean, a second by Carrie. Another roll call. Bill?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
And Nancy, yes. Thank you, 700. What else do we have? Anything else?
Yes, we have a gift donation approval for August 3rd. There's a district-wide gift from the Walpole Cooperative Bank, gifts for retirees in the amount of $5,031.
Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Bill, a second by Carrie. Roll call. Bill?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Nancy? Yes. Thank you, 700.
Through you, Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the following school committee minutes. Meeting minutes for June the 30th, 2020. School committee workshop meeting minutes for July the 24th, 2020. And school committee meeting minutes for July 24th, 2020.
Second.
I have a quick comment. Sorry.
Sure.
The June 30 minutes note a 610. It should be a 601. An abstention, not a nay.
Good point.
Good catch of the new guy.
It was my abstention. Yes.
That's two winners. Okay, we have a motion by Bill. We have a second by, I'm giving it to you, Kristen.
Yep.
Okay, roll call. Bill?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Jen?
Abstaining on the workshop.
Okay. Sean?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
And Nancy, yes. You got that, Mary? Thanks. Okay, you're up, Mark.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
I bet you do.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mark, a second by Sean. Quickly, we all say aye.
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 Great. Thank you very, very much, administrators. I think it's been a long couple of weeks. It's been a long couple of months, but
Been a
especially.
long summer.
2020.
It has. And I don't know what time, if I don't know if there's an alarm that goes off at 11, but if it does when I'm leaving, I'm apologizing in advance to Johnny Anderson, Jim Johnson, and the Walpole PD. 'Cause they seem to set off alarms all the time. So sorry, guys, if you're watching.
Thanks for all your support too.
No, thank you for all you're doing. It's good.
Thanks.
All right.